Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you also need to be careful with your computer's defense as well. If you need a VPN, go Nord. NordVPN.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months and gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via NordVPN.com/Kimber.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 17 of the Overthrows podcast. I'm Behram Kazi, who you can find at DefMango on Twitter. And with me, as always, is Jared Kimber, who you can find literally anywhere. And in our comments today, we already have Ishan Parekh, Jessica Bell, Path, right winger, no one knows, so Varun is there, Manan, Amit M, Sankalp Verma, Dr. Day Walker, and Mookie. So hello to all of you guys as well. And lots of rain, Jared, only 5 IPL games this week.
Yeah, it was kind of crazy, wasn't it? So it came from nowhere, and then there was another game today that was, I know it was an IPL, but was it the Ireland-Scotland game? Yeah. I think was washed out as well. So we've had some rain in cricket this week. Let's talk about weather and patterns.
Yeah.
And is El Nino back in? Are we still on El Nino? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure about that, but currently in Pakistan, there's a heat wave going on. You guys can probably see my sweat through the camera. That's how bad it is over here. But anyway, we've also got some other people, Sarosh Alam, Akshu Dhavla, and Sagar Hirani in the comments. And I mean, Overthrows is the podcast in which we talk about all the things that have happened in cricket on the field in the past week. So we always start with an IPL Round Up. And Jared, after losing 7 out of their first 8 games, having to beat Chennai in their final group game by more than 18 runs or chasing down a target in 18.1 overs, RCB have somehow beaten all odds and made it to the playoffs in what is one of the most remarkable arcs that the IPL has ever seen, right? I mean, I'm sure there are a few other ones like these, but this one just felt miraculous.
Yeah, it kind of, I suppose it reminds you a little bit of like a Pakistan type of arc, right? I remember, do you remember that run that Pakistan made at the 2019 finals?
Yes.
In the World Cup. And I remember Joe Harris, the former analyst of RCP, saying at the time, it's weird how we think about these things as, you know, form and everything else, when sometimes it has to do with selection and fitness and, you know, which teams you play and when you play them and where you play them and all that sort of stuff. And he was saying if you run that in reverse, it looks like Pakistan were in a great position and just lost out at the last minute. And I was thinking about that because I just saw the odds on the Rajasthan RCB game. And RCB are favourites, right?
Yeah.
And what, a week and a half ago, we all thought that Rajasthan were probably going to be getting a second chance. And so things have just changed so massively. You know, who knows where it goes from there. But it's a hell of a about face for RCB. When I think weeks ago, I was saying, why are they still playing Faf? They should be moving on. They should be trying out the combinations for next year. They should be working out who's good and who's not. They managed to sneak in when the maths never really made a lot of sense. So a lot of wins in a row, as I think we might have mentioned last week.
Yeah, 6 on the bounce now, and their net run rate was the best amongst 4 teams which had a 50% win record. And I mean, I remember a few weeks ago, you know, when they lost that 7th game, we both wrote them off. And it is just wonderful that they somehow managed to find a way to sneak through. And I mean, I was rooting for them. And I think they played quite the complete game as well in a lot of ways. I mean, Kohli scored, 47 odd? But that 47 was very crucial because the ball was turning square at that time, right? Faf got a 50 sluggish, but then he took that catch. When I saw Ramandeep's catch a few weeks ago or a week ago, I thought it could not be topped. And then I saw Faf's catch, which was amazing. Rajat Patidar has been so reliable in the middle orders, particularly versus spin. But in this game, he even took on the paces, right? 41 for him. Cam Green scored an unbeaten 38, took a wicket as well. And Gaikwad dropped him. And I mean, in the end, they fell 10 runs short. So you could make a case over there that might have changed the game. DK was injured, but scored his 14 off 6. And Maxwell, what a performance. Comes back into the team after a break and didn't look to be in the right mental space. Was replacing Will Jacks, which at this point were quite big shoes to fill as well. First scores 16 off 5 and then takes one for 25. Removing Gaikwad, one of the leading run scorers in the tournament on the first delivery, and he was also turning it a mile. So, I mean, there were so many performances in this RCB game that I feel like in the end, they kind of deserved it as well. And I mean, you look at Kohli's body language in the field, and I don't know, there's a part of me that's really chuffed for him.
It's funny. I was talking to a friend. I might have even said this on the scoreboard, but it's like it's a lot of celebration for what is probably still going to be an exit from this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
good luck to them because they're certainly riding a great wave at the moment. But the most likely result of this is that they will just lose in the playoffs rather than losing before the playoffs. But with all the flack that they've been getting, with all the stick that franchise gets, it's the fans I always respect with RCB because they come out to play no matter what, right? We saw them when they won the women's edition as well. So, all things considered, I thought that was absolutely, it was fun. As you said, you're kind of rooting for them. And also they were playing a brand of cricket that was exciting. And the team they were playing against was not. So, always, I had this conversation on Cricket 8 the other day. I think people think within cricket media, you cheer like, your favorite team. Then they think you cheer your articles and everything else. And then they think you cheer your favorite players, or whatever. It's like most people cheer chaos because chaos is the best thing to report on.
Yeah.
Right? Like I don't know why fans think it would be the opposite. Like you want the most fun thing or crazy thing or, bizarre thing to happen. And RCB have given that to anyone covering this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, they even defeated the rain gods. The weather looked very, very dodgy that day in Bengaluru. And at one point I felt like, there's going to be a washout and it's going to be the most RCB thing ever. And when that didn't happen, I thought, maybe they'll miss out by 1 run. Chennai will score 201 and that will be the most RCB thing ever. But they, beat all of those odds. They've been a really good fielding side off late, right? Take Siraj's drop out, which a lot of people were saying it was tactical because Dubey had a stinker. But yeah, I mean, so many events in that game. They've got like a bucket of momentum with them now. And like, of course, they've won 6 on the bounce. So a loss is inevitable at some point. But they're a vibes team, right? Like you said, like a Pakistan sort of arc. And I feel like, the conditions in Ahmedabad will favor them more than Rajasthan. I'm just, getting that feeling because I'm expecting truer bounce on that surface.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. At the moment, it doesn't really matter what surface Rajasthan get. They just don't look like they're playing like themselves, and they don't have Josh Butler. If Rajasthan's batting, I think Himanesh put some stats up today up on Twitter, and it's quite clear that Rajasthan have got in from their bowling. That's where they could probably do the most damage to all the teams that they're going to play, right? If Trent Bolt can get new wickets, if Chahal can get wickets, and the other guys all do their job, we're not going to be seeing 240, 250 final scores, right? And we generally expect finals to be lower scoring as well. A lot of those things bring it all back to Rajasthan. But the thing about where RCB are at and why we see sometimes teams like this go for it is emotionally, they were like, we've got nothing to lose. Whereas if you think about it from Rajasthan's point of view, they've had something to lose for quite some time now. And have been losing. So, none of that matters if Trent Bolt takes 2 wickets in the first over, right?
Yeah.
But
obviously,
if he doesn't, and Virat and Faf get going, or Will Jacks or Patidar get going, that's when those sorts of narratives start to play with people's minds of, we're going to lose again. And they don't have. I just think Rajasthan, the way they played, they don't have the freedom of the other 3 teams. They're probably a more well-rounded team than the other 3 teams, but they don't have the freedom of them.
Yeah, and I mean, Yash Dayal has already bowled his most important over of the IPL, so there's that, right? How frequently can he pull that off? But you're talking about Rajasthan. Of course, in the first 9 games that they played, they had 8 victories. So in a way, they are the mirror of the other Royals, right? Royal challenges Bengaluru and Rajasthan Royals. It's very interesting how, complete opposites of each other. A team that looked almost invincible and then has lost the last, out of the last 5 games, 1 has been a washout and the other 4 they've lost. So it's been quite the fall from grace. They've actually slipped down to 3rd, so they're not going to get a second bite at the cherry. It's insane. And I mean, they lost to Punjab this week, which was a game that, I mean, you would bet your money on Rajasthan. And I mean, sure, some of the bowlers had good games. Avesh got 2 for 28 and Sandeep got none for 28. But the batters have really all fallen off a cliff, right? The form is gone. Butler's gone. And we keep talking about this team as having the best bowling lineup in the IPL on paper, but we haven't seen a lot of that. Of course, if Bolt turns up, either of the spinners, one of Ashwin or Chahal turns up, you'd say that they are still, in a very good position to go on and beat RCB. But the momentum thing is a bit important. And on the flip side, you could say that RCB are bound to lose a game, and ultimately Rajasthan will win one. So that makes this a really, really exciting contest, and I think it's going to be a riveting one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about momentum just because it's kind of nonsense. But they can't be hitting these playoffs with any confidence, right? And I think there was an element of like watching them maybe after they won about 8 in a row when they lost a couple, and you think, well, that's probably fair. Like, it's hard to keep that intensity up the whole way. It doesn't seem to be that though, right? It seems to be the fact that their bowling was carrying them a little bit. They got good performances out of their batting. Sampson and Rian Parag have helped them a couple of times. Jaiswal, Butler have both had, 2 or 3 big innings. Now you're starting to look at probably what we thought might happen last year and maybe even the year before. It's probably been a while. They don't actually bat that deep in a tournament that probably now seems to be more loaded towards teams that do bat deep. They could still take so many wickets and completely destroy these other 3 sides. But if they can't make any kind of a decent total, then it probably won't matter, I don't think, anymore.
Yeah, I don't think so. And I mean, I am not sure why Hetmyer is not playing. Maybe he's injured, so he's someone they've missed. Sanju Samson has scored 500 plus runs this season, but he's bound to have a few failures. They'll be hoping that he doesn't fail versus RCB. Quickly, tell me who you got. RCB versus Rajasthan. Who's winning this? Who's getting knocked out?
I'm probably still going to go with Rajasthan. I just think they're a better side. And form doesn't matter as much to me, only because you don't know if form's going to continue. Whereas the other thing that you know that the better team is probably more likely to come out on top. But I'm not saying it with any great confidence. I don't think there's a certainty in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs. I think both of the games are really up in the air. And if you wanted to, ask me if RCB would win as well, like, yeah, I could probably come up with reasons why they would win. But I just think that Rajasthan are the better side, and form is it is what it is, and maybe the confidence will just ride all the way through. But I just think Rajasthan will work it out now. I mean, it'd be a horrendous season for them if they go out in the first round. And so, motivation is a big part of these sorts of things. Where, as I said, RCB are maybe playing a little bit more with found money.
Yeah, because they are playing like there's nothing to lose. And from their situation, you understand that. Whereas, like you said, Rajasthan have everything to lose. I'm going to go RCB just because of the vibes. I come from Pakistan. We're all about the vibes anyway over here. So just for the fun element of
if
this,
only there was a RCB version of the Pakistan. What's Saklain Mushtaq call it? The
Kudrat ka Nizam.
Yeah. We need a Bengaluru version of that.
Yeah. I mean, the rain kind of was in line with that, right? But I don't see them winning the entire thing, though, because they've won 6 on the bounce. 7, okay. 8, maybe. 9? Bit of a stretch. I don't know. But you never know with T20 cricket. Like, it could happen still. Anyway, let's move on to CSK. Of course, that's the team that got knocked out, who everyone pretty much had their money on of making it to the playoffs. And they lost to RCB with a margin big enough that their net run rate slips down. And I mean, if you look at their bowling, right, they conceded 220 odd, something around that area, 218, right? And Santner's figures were 1 for 23, and he was the best bowler on the day. He turned it like more than anyone else I've seen this IPL probably. And Theekshana had none for 25. That's 1 for 48 in 8 overs. That means the rest of the bowlers went for 170 in 12. I feel like that's where they lost the game. Even before the Dubey howler.
Well, Dubey's innings was one of the worst innings I've ever seen. I think what happened was, and this is going to sound really weird, Chennai got all the best of the conditions. As in, RCB were flying, then the rain came, and so they had to restart again. And the rain got on the wicket. Quite clearly, that wicket changed. I think Varun showed that. I think Jimenez showed that. Like, anyone who had access to Hawkeye data could see that the wicket changed. And then it went back to normal. but they probably didn't get the wickets that they thought they were going to get in that period. So, Santner got Virat out, and then they got Faf not too long after that. But at that stage, they probably should have ripped out a few. And then, of course, padded up, went to town. And then, as you said before, Maxwell and everyone sort of did their job at the end, right? Like, Dinesh Karthik, everyone did their job perfectly. And that score still should have been chaseable on that wicket. Yeah. But Chennai's just been so tentative with the bat all year, and they haven't put any pressure back. And if you're going up against RCB, that's what you should be doing, right? Like, just put pressure back on them. And there wasn't enough pressure put on at any stage until right at the end. And that's a classic Chennai a way of going about it. And that style is, worked for them for many years. But there was no reason for them not to win the game, let alone not to get into that position. And then Dubé losing form has probably maybe cost them the season. And look, no one's going to have a go at him because he had a great start to the season. But him losing form has probably cost them the season, because that was the one batter who everyone was terrified of and could actually bat at the rate that they wanted, that the other teams were batting at. And then they did get one of the worst bits of luck I've ever seen, which is MS Dhoni hitting a six out of the ground, which meant that the wet ball had to be replaced with a dry ball. And suddenly it was Yash Dayal that was bowling that last over, wasn't it? Yeah. Suddenly he's bowling, he can just control the ball. And we knew how wet the ball was because Lockie Ferguson was firing into people's heads every 5 minutes, right? And
basically.
And that changing is huge. And I will say this, though, it's all well and good to say that cost them the game. But there was a game earlier this season where there was a ball change very late, which Chennai won because of the ball change. So they're probably 50-50 on ball changes late in innings. But in this case, it cost them that game.
Even DK in the post-game video that I saw, video clip, he highlighted that. And I mean, it's crazy how cricket is such a conditions-based game that a change of ball kind of, meant that the other one didn't go for six. And I mean, it was incredible that there was that moment. You can also consider Gaikwad, who was scoring consistent runs, got a duck and then dropped Cam Green. Both, negatives for him. Shivam Dube ran out Rachin Ravindra, who was playing beautiful on 61 of 37. Then he scores 7 of 15. And if you noticed, and I mean, we were talking about this in the group, in our Good Areas group, that the first game of the season versus RCB, Dube was troubled by the short delivery. We then did not see that the entire IPL, and he was Chennai's MVP, and we were all raving about Shivam Dube. Last game, he again is troubled by the short delivery. So it was kind of like bookended by two weird performances. A terrific season for the man, and who really hasn't done much since getting selected for India.
I would say this: Ravindra should blame himself for that run out. Not that Dube, I whether there was two there or whatever, that's fine. There's no reason for Ravindra not to take two steps back and go in his crease. He was never going to make it to the other end. He was the set batter. You have to look after yourself in that situation. You can't have the other guy do it. But I don't know if you remember, Shivam Dube also almost ran out Ravindra Jadeja as well. So it was an absolute shit show of an innings there. But look, the amount of times this year I thought to myself, they were in a position to win this game and they kind of let it go, or they were they were the better team of these two sides and they still lost this game. They didn't play very good cricket all the way through, and they never really adapted with the new style of T20 cricket. And if Partharana plays, they're probably a second chance. Partharana is worth 2 wins this year on the way he is bowled, right? And their game plan needed a Partharana. And without him in the side, that's the difference. But there's a lot of teams who lost players, right? So I don't think you can just sit there and blame that, because, there were many other teams that lost players. Delhi all the way through. Delhi lost Harry Brook and Mitch Marsh, 3 or 4 games in. There were many players who weren't available at different times and everything else. So you've got to play with the way that you are. And if your whole game plan is essentially Gaikwad needs to make 100, Partharana needs to take 4 for 12, it's not a good game plan.
Yeah, no, that's completely fair. I will say that it wasn't just Partharana. They lost the Fizz and also Deepak Chahar with the new ball. But then again, they coped fine without them as well. Like, they still were in playoff contention.
I think Ravi Jadeja. I mean, you're right. I thought Fizz had a good year. I don't think he didn't have a brilliant Fizz year. and Chahar wasn't bowling particularly well. Deshpande probably bowled better there, but they did have to use shuttle with the new ball at times, and they had some issues. But as I just said, they've got a similar record to Delhi, right? And Delhi lost all, had Kuldeep injured as well, right? And also had to work out how to bring Rishabh back from injury, and had Nortje in his career worst form. So did he play for them? Was it Nortje that played for them?
Yes. Nortje played for Delhi, went for all those runs.
So lots of things went wrong for Delhi, and they've ended up with the same amount of wins as Chennai. I don't know. At a certain point, you do have to just think to yourself, they underperformed this year. And I don't think there's really an excuse because, as I said, I think Gaikwad and Patharana had to be like friggin' geniuses to win them games. And that's not how you should be playing.
Yeah, I think the main takeaway is that they were a bit sluggish, to start. And that did cost them ultimately. And even in that last game, like they needed 17 off the final over. That ball doesn't go out of the stadium. Dhoni wins it for you, or doesn't win it, but helps you through. It could have happened. But you know what? People are going to forget Jadeja's knock, 42 of 22, unbeaten. That was the real knock that made it possible for Chennai. I feel like he should.
They did well to almost get home, but they didn't bat particularly well so many times this year.
Yeah, I mean, 50% win record. 4 teams had it. Someone was going to miss out, and their net run rate just wasn't up to the mark. So they only have themselves to blame, even if things happen to them. Anyway, let's move on. You were mentioning Delhi a lot, so let's just quickly do them. We knew they were out. Then they knocked Lucknow out, which was great. Jake Fraser-McGurk didn't get a score, but the other 2 youngsters did, right? 50s for Abhishek Porel and Tristan Stubbs. I've been impressed with all 3. I think all 3 are going to be retained. And we're all talking about whether or not Dhoni will play another IPL game. We're not talking about Ishant Sharma, are we? 3 for 34 in what might be his last outing, and had some fun with Kohli earlier, which made some good reels and everything. Terrible catching team. They dropped 2 in their final game as well. I feel like had they caught better and fielded better, they could have maybe snuck through to the playoffs even. So I think this is a team, when I look towards the future, this is that team that could really build towards something. And like we think that Chennai might have, not definitely underachieved, I feel like Delhi have kind of overachieved, haven't they?
Yes. But look, there's 2 ways of looking at it. It's a bit like the Mumbai thing, if you think about it. Have they potentially, is Jake Fraser-McGurk going to ever play another season like that? Is Tristan Stubbs ever going to play another season like that? If I'm a Delhi fan, I'm saying, yeah, of course, right? They're great. They're going to keep doing that. Those are pretty outlier seasons, right? Like I think Tristan Stubbs was going to get 3 runs a ball in the death this season. Yeah. And Fraser-McGurk, we've never seen anything like it. Is there a possibility that they've actually got 2 of the greatest seasons ever out of 2 overseas players, and it's going to finish and they're going to regress next year? So I don't know. If I was a Delhi fan, I would definitely be more hopeful. I'd still be worried about the fact that what was it? Was it Sourav Ganguly who gave the quote at the start of the season saying, well, we're not using Prithvi Shaw as our opener because Warner and Marsh open the batting for Australia? And it's like,
yes, that's true.
He doesn't,
and they don't.
Yeah, Warner doesn't. Marsh doesn't open the batting for Australia.
Yeah.
And there was a few times with captaincy and with everything. Not with captaincy, but with strategy and everything else, where we did a lot of Delhi games on the Cricket 8 watch along where we're just like, why are they doing this? It doesn't make any sense. There's one particular game where it just felt like they just completely randomized their bowling selections at the end for no reason, when it made, and you look at all that and you go, okay, so they've got 4 or 5 players of which they can pick from. If the mega auction only allows you to have 4 players, they've got some interesting players to be able to do there. And if it's 5 or 6, they might even be in a better position. But are they going to use them correctly? Are they going to set us up correctly? Or is it going to be another, year going ahead where these things happen? And, we think in sport that people just getting better and better and better, especially at younger ages. But sometimes you just have outlier seasons. So I don't know how good Tristan Stubbs and Jake Fraser-McGurk are yet. I thought they were both magnificent and, absolutely brilliant. But I don't know. I can't tell Delhi fans what they probably want to hear, which is, great, we almost made the finals and next year we will definitely make the playoffs. You hope that's true, but who knows?
I mean, Jake Fraser-McGurk's bat swing is something which I would be, excited about. And Stubbs, literally...
Can I ask you a question about Jake Fraser-McGurk? Were you excited about Chris Lynn?
Not as much, actually. I thought that he was a slogger, but there was something about Chris Lynn that I felt like he might just be a big bash, phenomena.
He's pretty good.
I initially thought the same about Jake Fraser McGurk until I saw him take down spin. That's where my perspective changed a bit.
I think if you go back, there was a lot of. I remember people who kept telling me that Chris Lynn was the best player in the world. So 2017, he averaged 49 in the IPL with a strike rate of 181. Right? That's pretty good, yeah? The next year, he averaged 32 with a strike rate of 130. He never went above 141 again in his career. Made runs. He didn't stop making runs. As you said, spin was an issue. Also, people worked out how to bowl to him, even with seam.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
I don't know if that's where Fraser McGurk is, and I don't even know if that's where we are with Stubbs, right? Stubbs has come from looking disappointing for a period of time. I kind of trust what he's doing is more repeatable, but Fraser McGurk might also be that next level that we're talking about. But we can't ignore the fact that Chris Lynn had a Chris Gale season at one stage, and a lot of people around the world got really excited on him, and it never happened again, right?
Yeah.
That's the caveat. And if that's the case, they've just got two incredible seasons where maybe they'll never get that level out of those players again. I hope I'm wrong, because they're both fun to watch and it was good times. But they've got options, I think, going ahead, and there's certainly some talent there. But it's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, the way he wrecked Naveen in that final game with those shots over long on and those monster pulls over cover, I love him. And also Abhishek Purell. I think that guy has a very complete skill set. Great behind the stumps as well, because he pitched in for Rishabh Pant. And if you have that skill set, that puts you in better stead. He opened the batting at times and, hooks, pulls, uppercuts through the covers, square of the wicket on the offside. Like, I really enjoyed watching Delhi. They were entertaining. And I hope, because you're right, there's no way to tell for certain that, these guys will become S-tier talents. But I hope that they do, because it's like a youngsters fill team and they've had that ethos. So I'd like to see that continue, and I'd like to see them qualify for the playoffs next season. Anyway, let's move on to a team that also was quite bad this year. And their last two games got washed out. Gujarat, who we called Gujarat Turtles at one point, then they went turbo. Again, I mean, very interesting season. Lots of anchor style batters, right? And a lot rested on David Miller and Shubman Gill's shoulders. Miller even got injured. The bowling attack, which both of us thought like they would be one of the bowling teams of this IPL, just did not come through at all. Rashid did not have his best season. Noor's, as you say, best delivery is great. Other stuff quite wavered at times. And then Sai Kishore maybe wasn't used properly. Josh Little barely got a game. When he came on in the end, I was like, he should have gotten more games, right? And Mohit Sharma also dropped off a cliff somewhat. So very disappointing season. This is the first time they've had one, because the first season that they ever played, they won, and then they lost the final in the second. So lots of soul searching to do for the Titans.
Yeah, it's interesting now to think. I remember being asked at the time whether I thought they were lucky when they won their first title. And when they came back next year and they made the final again, you're like, wow, it's hard to call it luck when it's consistency. And then you look at this year and you're like, what are they doing? They were, they were unlucky with form of their bowlers. I'm more than willing to give them that. But they were not batting in the same tournament as everyone else. Right?
Absolutely not.
And they had a weak batting lineup as well. And I don't think Hardick's been really fantastic, but thinking David Miller's going to come up the order and sort that out, it felt a little bit odd. As you said, the Josh Little thing was quite interesting. But I think even if you're as unfair as I've been on all that sort of stuff, you have to be fair and just say, who would have thought that Mohit and Rashid Khan would put in that level of season for both of them? Noor Ahmed's a bit different. I've always been a little bit lower on Noor Ahmed than everyone else has. Not that I don't think he's fantastic, but, he has to keep landing the ball in the right area consistently. And I haven't quite seen that as much from him as, say, someone like Kuldeep. I just think they are... I just think they played a whole season without any real idea of what they wanted to do or why they were doing it. Like, what's their team identity? I couldn't really tell you, because it's anchors with the bat and defensive bowlers with the ball. And it's like, well, that's a terrible mix. Like, I can tell, if you just told me that and told me nothing about the players, I'd be like, I don't care if you have Rashid Khan. I don't care if you have Shubman Gill and David Miller. That's a terrible mix. If your team is anchor heavy and then also has defensive bowlers. Well, how are you going to get the wickets for the lower totals that you're going to make? Like, it doesn't make any sense on paper, and that's kind of what we saw. But there's talent there. It's just not put together in a very good team.
Their team identity right now is Sai Sudarshan going rogue. Ever since you wrote that piece, we potted about him. 150s, single-digit score. That was their story, I suppose. But yeah, very underwhelming, and I feel like they could not fill that Hardik-sized hole at all. Anyway, let's take a short break. We've covered 5 IPL teams, 5 more to go. You guys are watching Overthrows with Biram and Jared. Stay tuned. We'll be back with 5 more IPL teams after this short ad.
Thanks to the kind folks at Flexispot for looking after my office and my butt by sending me their E7 Pro desk that save your favorite desk heights at a touch of a button. You don't have to crank anything. This thing just finds the height that you like and you can work. And their BS12 Pro chair that supports my posterior while I'm recording, well, this ad and all my shows. If you need great desks, especially ones that change heights or the best quality chairs, head on over to Flexispot today.
Welcome back to Overthrows. You guys are with Behram and Jared, and we've gotten lots of comments too in the meantime. There's one Ben Franklin who's spamming the comments and swearing at me, so there's that guy. Sai Krishna Chavali is in, and we have Harshit Rawat, AB, Muki, all of you guys. Thank you for joining us. Anyway, let's move on to the Whack House team of the IPL. Last time we'll be discussing them. Punjab had a pretty decent week, actually. Even if they ended this tournament with 5 wins out of 14, that could very well have been something like 8 wins had they also fielded better. Another terrible catching team, right? And also just so many close games that they lost and even won. So interesting team in that regard. I mean, Nathan Ellis had a great first game of the season, 1 for 24, which made you wonder, could they have tried him earlier?
First and last, right?
Yeah, first and last. He didn't even play the last game, right? So he just played 1, which is really interesting. Harshal Patel, latter half of the season was great. Even ended with 3 for 28 versus Rajasthan. Really, really happy for him. And Rahul Chahar was another guy. Ever since he came back from, getting dropped, he had a bunch of great games and ended with 2 for 26 versus Rajasthan. They did not know how to use Sam Curran for the longest time. I think they used him well in that last win. In the Rajasthan game, he scored, 63 unbeaten, took them home. And Riley Rousseau found form towards the end, scored a bunch of 50s, 49 of 24 in the final game. And even Prabh Simran finally delivered with another 50 because he's been a patchy player, hasn't he? So either you get full reward of or starting him or it's just like he's gone early. So he scored 71 or 45, good for them. But I really feel that just like how Delhi, you feel a bit more confident that these guys could do something next season. I don't know if I feel the same way about Punjab.
It's a weird team. And so I know Australia rate Alice really, really highly. And you look at his numbers and they kind of always stand up. And, compared to some of the other overseas bowlers who've come into the IPL and get game after game and haven't done very well, Alice feels like, to me, probably someone who's done slightly better than that and yet doesn't get any games, right? Like, it is weird to me that, Mitchell Starc is going to have this entire year of playing and Nathan Ellis last year, I'm just trying to find his numbers here. Took 13 wickets in 10 matches, bowled at the death and went under 9 runs and over. And the year before that, I think, or the couple of years before that, I think he took a couple of wickets when he came in. But forget that. Let's just not. If you have Arshdeep with the new ball and you have Rabada to back him up, you have Rabada to bowl a little bit in the middle, and then you have Alice to bowl that second half of the game, maybe at least 3 overs in the last 10 overs. That's a really good balance.
Yeah.
Right? And then and I still think they have one of the better bowling attacks. Especially, I thought the spinners did quite well. Rahul Chahar, when he found form, bowled really well. Yeah. And Harpreet, when they let him bowl, is really, really good. And so, and Harshal obviously took 1 million wickets, right? So they actually have one of the better bowling attacks. But the problem is that they've once you have Curran and Arshdeep in the same side, one of them is not going to get to bowl the bit that they're going to have to bowl, and then one of them's going to have to be jammed in to bowl more overs at the death. And the other issue is they probably are right. They need Sam Curran's batting, but Sam Curran's batting is not like plus batting. He's some weird anchor for them that I don't even really understand.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. I mean, At least Harshal turned it around, right? Because in an interview, I saw him say that he couldn't land that slow one, the one that dips properly. And then when he started landing it, he found success. Had they gone with Ellis and Harshal throughout at the death, who knows what could have happened, right? Like, I mean, props to Ashutosh and Shashank, the real fake Shashank Singh, who kind of helped them win a few games over there in between, or at least take those games close. But just there's not a lot of faith over here because I don't think that they think about team construction the same way that someone who knows about cricket does. That's where I feel like Punjab is lacking, and they've got to look at life beyond Shikhar Dhawan as well now. Identify a captain, look to or identify players that they want to retain. It's all hodgepodge, nothing straightforward for them.
Well, I think the biggest issue is that they have Indian talent, which is great. I don't think they have an Indian star. And I'm not sure they have an Indian star in the making. Smashatosh might be, might prove me wrong, and Arshdeep might get back to great form. But they have good players, but no one fantastic. Yeah. If this was a franchise that was run well and we trusted, we'd be like, do you know what? This is a good basis. Let's say they can. Well, we have no idea. They're going to be able to save between 4 and 8 players, probably, right? Depending on what the regulations end up being. If it's more players, they're actually in a good position to be like, great, we know what our Indian core is. Let's get, and I'm just going to say this once for the ownership group of that franchise. Let's get overseas players that add to the team, not subtract from the team, right? That allow our Indian players we already know that are good to do their jobs, and let's get a player in between them that will work, right? So, with Prab Simran, you probably need someone like Devon Conway, or I'm trying to think of, you need an overseas opener who's going to make more than average runs, that allows Prab Simran to go absolutely berserk, right? You need that one player, right? You need a death bowler. You don't need another new bowler, especially if you're going to keep Rabada, but they may not. But if they're going to keep Arshdeep, don't get another new ball bowler. Right?
And bowl your spinners. Please bowl your spinners.
Imagine bowling your spinners until the end. All those things are available to you. So, yes, I think, that there's no doubt in my mind that, we're in a situation where there is something to work from here. I just don't really trust them to get it right because they haven't shown to me that they've ever been able to do that as a franchise. And when you're building up from a low-level core, which is kind of what it is. It's a low-level core. You need to be really, really smart, but you can have a really high end. Chances are, though, we know what's going to happen is they're going to go after the shiniest bit of tinsel that they can, and it will probably mean that they will ruin some of the players that they've already found. And if you're going to say anything about them, I think you would have to say that they're pretty good at finding young and untested Indian talent in the last couple of years, right? That's a huge thing. If you can keep doing that, you should be a successful franchise consistently year after year. It's just that we don't trust that.
Yeah, no, touche. Don't trust them at all. Another team that failed to make it to the playoffs in the final week and was part of that 14-point logjam in the middle was Lucknow. Of course, they lost it early in the week when they lost to Delhi. The playoffs were out of reach. And then they did beat Mumbai. But then, of course, NRR was where they fell short. Now, Nicholas Pooran had a great week, right? 20 ball 50, 19 ball 50, scores 61, 75. Beautiful. And then KL Rahul, on the other hand, scores 55 or 41. What's going on over there? You think it's a mental thing with KL?
I'm doing a Red Inker very soon on this with someone who wrote about it for an Indian newspaper. I don't know is the best answer. The further we get in, I remember him making a 50 against England in a one-day game on a really flat pitch not that long ago, where I reckon he was about 50 off 25 balls or something like that. And India had a really good platform. He came in, had a chance of them going well over 300, and it was just beautiful striking. He was so in control of it. And when he plays a shot now, you still go, that's a world-class batter. And then he just doesn't show any intent at all, and he shuts up shop at the first sign of any issues. But you look at that whole team, Stoinis probably batted within himself until he could go nuts. Pooran has great figures, but let's be honest, the form that Pooran's in and this tournament, he could have had a strike rate of 220.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like he exploded just towards the end. He was like,
Yeah.
you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go for it.
Exactly. But there were so many times he was in too early in situations he shouldn't have been in. And, they're using Krunal Pandya as this firefighter player, right? And it's funny, isn't it? We see Akshar, Jadeja, and him. It's like all left-arm finger spinners now have to be able to bat at first drop when the wicket's doing something. And then they all end up with these terrible strike rates because they're nudging the ball around forever. It was just, I don't know with KL. I don't know what to say. The 1 year that he had the really good numbers, was that potentially the best batting lineup he's ever been in? Is that the difference? Once you put him in a great batting lineup, he can free himself to be that player. But he hasn't always shown that when he's opened the batting for India either, right? So
that's true.
He's too... I'm trying to think if I've ever had this meeting with any player. I think someone needs to just take him aside and not yell at him in front of everyone. But someone needs to take him aside and just say, just be the best KL role you can be. Forget the match situation. Forget what you think of the batting order. Just bat the way that you can bat. And if we still fail, it'll be because the other players aren't good enough. At the moment, it's like they're failing and he's failing. Right?
Yeah.
Because even if he's successful, he's not, especially the way the tournament was played this year, he's not going to do enough. And even if you look at him at the death, he still doesn't get to the point where he starts smashing the ball everywhere violently, right? So it's just bad.
Yeah, and I mean, we all know he can do that, right? As you said, we've seen that free-flowing bat from him in the past, and he's very, very wristy. I love it when he plays those wristy shots. So I hope he's able to figure it out.
He can hit
I really
sixes.
I hope he switches franchises because clearly there's some bad blood over here as well with the owner or whatever.
That would be interesting too, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the bowling was interesting for them as well. Krunal Pandya had these frugal figures every now and then. Even this week, he took 1 for 29. Bishnoi up and down, but like you said in one of the other podcasts, never takes 3 wickets. This week, there was a 1 for 26, but then he dropped 2 catches in the same game. So that got nullified. Mohsin, great in the power play, much like Khalil for Delhi, and then kind of gives it away whenever he comes back next. So he also got none for 29. But then again, you'd have to say they really, really missed Mayank Yadav. If he was around and fully fit and could deliver the way that we saw him deliver in those 2 games that he won for them, I mean, they could have very well qualified for the playoffs. That and the persistence to not try Kyle Mayers at all, I don't get that. I mean, even the West Indies have lost faith in Kyle Mayers. Does he have like disciplinary issues or something? Because I rated him highly.
The only thing I would say is that I suppose, so who are their overseas players? They had one overseas bowler in Naveen and whoever, Shima Joseph got the position at one stage. And
Shima
so
Joseph,
so they needed one overseas bowler. Stoinis was obviously automatic. Puram was automatic. Who was the next overseas player? Oh,
Quinton de Kock.
So Quinton is... I've got no problem giving him half a season. I think Quinton de Kock is a really fascinating IPL player because he's had an incredibly long career without really ever being brilliant, but he's played in some really good sides. And the fact he can open and, bat up and wicket keep is, quite important. Like, I would never disagree with that. But he has a lot of years where he's kind of playing as an anchor. So I think it was, where is it? I'm just trying to find it now. So 2022, he had a strike rate of 149. And I think a lot of that was on the back of a big 100, if I remember correctly. And 2015, he had a strike rate of 158. Most of his other years, his strike rate is quite low, right? Like 140, 134, 116 in one year, 124, 136. Some of those years are okay. Some of them are not. But he's never really been a consistent high scorer or a consistent fast scorer. And it's very rare that he's an outlier on either of those two. Like he never averages 50. He never has like a 50 or 60 year average. And he never has like 160, 170 strike rate year, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of player that you can go, okay, it's going to cause us some issues with the wicket keeping. But they had 2 other wicket keepers in the side.
Yeah, he wasn't even keeping wicket. Like I saw Quinton de Kock.
Wasn't keeping wicket because KL wanted to.
Once or twice.
So if that was another side, and you would be saying, okay, well that makes sense. We can't do that because of the wicket keeping. Whereas in this particular case, you would be saying, no, we don't need to. We can try Kyle Mayers, or I don't know, I can't remember who else is in their squad, or try something different. It's like they just decided not to try anything different when it wasn't working. And in the end, that has probably cost them the win, because that one extra game. Yeah. And the Mike Yadav thing is fair, right? But CSK and Patharana and Delhi and Mitch Marsh, and a lot of teams missed out on a lot of good players in this tournament. Not to mention all the England players disappearing at the end.
Yeah,
fair. So there was plenty of other teams that had the same excuse. I think Lucknow is quite a well-balanced team compared to even three of the finalists, right?
Yeah.
But what are they good at? Right? What's their main skill? Like, their main skill at the moment to me would be if they can get to 100 off 12 overs and Nicholas Pooran comes in. I can't think of a single other thing they do that they are good at than making sure that they haven't lost many wickets and Nicky P can just come in and be Nicky P. Right?
Yeah.
There isn't another thing that you're not terrified of Stoinis. He's going to play a couple of good innings. Quinton de Kock, I've just said, might make 100, but generally he's probably going to make 30 odd and go out. KL is probably going to bat too slow. Ravi Bishnoi, as for a wrist spinner, doesn't take enough wickets. Krunal Pandya is a defensive bowler. They don't really have great seam options. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's balanced, but it's not balanced in like a great way. And I think we did the exit interviews today, and I think Cheyenne came up with the line of they're basically a plus team in one part of the game, which I think was middle overs batting, which was I think it was middle overs batting, or it was middle overs bowling. It was one of them. And that's it. So of this, they might have ended up with a good record, but if you actually delve into this, they were probably lucky to end up with a good record.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And I think my favorite Lucknow moment of the week was when Arshad Khan smashed that 25 ball 50, and all of a sudden it seemed like, oh, can they win this? Can they beat Delhi? But that didn't happen. And I mean, ultimately, I don't think they deserve to make it to the playoffs either. So anyway, let's move on. Let's quickly do Mumbai as well. Then we can come to the top two teams. Of course, I saved the best for last so that people don't leave us. Someone in the comments was asking if we've done Mumbai yet. We haven't. So, well, you made it. They lost to Lucknow again in their final game of the season, and they ended up bottom of the league, 4 wins out of 14. Sure, there were some good performances. Tushara, 3 for 28. Chawla, 3 for 29. Rohit finally got a 50, right? Off 28 deliveries, 68 of 38 for him. Good timing with respect to the World Cup. So he'll enjoy that form because he has to lead India now, and he has to obviously play all those games. There was a lot of hype around Namandhir when the season started. I didn't see anything in particular, but in this last game, he scored a 25 ball 50, and he was, I think, unbeaten on 62. The batters, though, underperformed this season. You look at that batting card and you're like, they've got to be winning more. Like, they've got to be a Sunrisers sort of team at the very least, where in a few games they outbat the opposition. Did not happen for them. And with the ball, they were basically, for the most part, Bumrah or bust. Even if Chawla had some good games when he came back, and Tushara, when he was given a run, he kind of found his feet. But all in all, a really, really tough season for Hardik Pandya. His captaincy has come under a lot of scrutiny. We've talked about how he's never gotten his own batting position right. And I mean, the captaincy was a bit all over the place. I think it took him like 6 games just to get the bowling order right? What phase am I giving this particular bowler overs in? I think it took him a long time to figure that out. And the fractures in the team were evident. And there was a lot of, media scrutiny and lots of outside noise. Probably even got to him, some of it.
It's interesting. We just talked about QDK, and Ishan Kishan is another player who he's just never been consistently a plus IPL player, I don't think. And he's had some good years, but it's funny, every time I do a list of like young Indian talent or potential sides and I don't put him in, everyone's really frustrated. I was like, what am I missing? Like, he's not that consistent, and he's never really had that. Rohit hasn't been a plus T20 player for I don't know how many years now. When anchoring was more important, he was a really good anchor. But he was never a great anchor either. He's certainly never been a Virat Kohli or KL Rahul level or anchor consistently over years and years. We've never seen that from him. Sky was fantastic. Probably came in a little underdone because of the injuries and everything. Tilak Varma had a great season. As you said, Hardik. Everything went wrong with Hardik, right? His form, his confidence, his position in the batting order. He's clearly not fit enough to be bowling consistently either. Teams worked out Tim David, right?
Yes,
so teams were holding back spin and just going, fine, we will keep the spinner later, right? We don't think we're going to take a risk here, and with the impact sub, that's maybe an easier thing to do now than we've seen, for many different places. So yeah, it's you look at it from that point of view, and and it's that's the strength. I mean, I'm probably missing someone in the middle order and some of the other guys.
Sky, you're missing Sky.
No, I said Sky. I mean, Sky.
Oh, you did say
he
Sky?
He came late, didn't he? I could have played some good innings, but that's their strength.
Ishan Kishan, Rohit Sharma, Sky. You've
Tilak
got
Varma.
Hardik Pandya, Tilak Verma, and what's his face? Tim David. That was the batting order, right?
That's the core, the main core of it. And there were some other players. Muhammad Nabi was in the side a couple of times as well. But yeah, you look at this and it's just ridiculous. Like they should have made more runs, but
absolutely,
it's hard to make runs when you are working with one side of the ball that doesn't work. Now we've seen 3 teams probably, or Kolkata probably got their bowling line up together a little bit more towards the end, but basically 3 teams who managed to do that and managed to play with that freedom. A lot of that is form. Right?
Yes.
Like you look at it. I think if you were to go through line by line of the Mumbai batting lineup compared to the Sunrisers batting lineup, I think you would be, saying to yourself, player wise, reputation wise, everything else, it's not all that much different, right? Same with KKR. You might say there's more batting talent in the Mumbai lineup than KKR.
Yes,
but Phil Salt and Sunil Narine absolutely carried that batting order brilliantly. And then a bunch of other guys kept chipping in, right? So they were ahead of the game so many times, and then the other players chipped in. Sunrisers, the openers went even well beyond that level. And the middle order of RCB was absolutely ridiculous. That sort of Will Jacks padded up sort of thing in that second half of that season. There probably wasn't a time outside of very early on in the tournament when Mumbai had a batting lineup where you're like, oh, they, Sky and Tilak Varma can do something here. And then they have one bowler.
Basically.
Right? So, and he's a fantastic bowler, but with one batter, you can do a lot. Look at Gaikwad. With one batter, you can do quite a lot. With one bowler, it's a little bit harder to have that kind of impact. And I thought Bumrah, they probably wasted, I don't know if it's going to be Bumrah's greatest season. I'm not sure I've ever seen him bowl better in an IPL season than this year, though.
I mean, I think he's at the peak of his powers, and there were games in which he was taking 3 for 14, and they were losing, right? Like we've seen that so frequently recently, even for India in that Test match versus England. Bumrah had an amazing game, and they lost that test, so he's been a bit unlucky that way. But I mean, I don't know where Mumbai are headed, because maybe Rohit wants to leave now. Who knows? And who will they retain? What's going on over there in that franchise? I mean, I guess we'll find out next year. But anyway, coming to the 2 big teams, and we'll talk about them together because they're going to be playing against each other in the first qualifier. Sunrisers Hyderabad versus the Kolkata Knight Riders. The Sunrisers, of course, due to the washout versus Gujarat, and then their chase of 215 versus Punjab, they climbed up to second position and now have that insurance. They could lose the first game and still be in the tournament. Abhishek Sharma has just been a bit of a revelation this season, along with Travis Head, but he got a duck recently and got a peach from Arshdeep, right? I don't even blame him. But Abhishek got a 21 ball 50, 66 of 28, and I mean, this kid, he is the future of Indian T20 batting. I think I feel quite comfortable making that statement. And they've got all of these, powerful batters who are blistering when it comes to hitting the ball. You've got your Klassens. Even I think Nitish Kumar Reddy has been impressive. Travis Shake, as people are calling them, Travis Head and Abhishek Sharma, or you call them the Southpaw Sloggers, the Intent Twins. So many names for those guys. Everyone tunes in. That is the favorite part of the IPL for so many. I mean, Varun's in here, right? That's the part he looks forward to every week.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, those guys opening the batting. And then, even though this was a batter-heavy team and they were out-batting opposition because they'd score 250 and the other teams would get to 230, that was what was happening. Cummins had a phenomenal start to the IPL, but the form dropped off. But then Bhuvi and Natarajan picked up form, and they've actually been pretty good. Now, they only still have about half a spinner because Vyaskant is young. So I think that could be a caveat, because you look at KKR and sure, they've lost Salt. But you never know. Gurbaz could have a good game coming in as a replacement. And your spin duo of Varun Chakravarti and Sunil Narayan, and I'm not even talking about Narayan's runs right now, that is where I feel Kolkata have the slight edge over the Sunrisers.
Yeah, I suppose the problem is that without Salt, like Salt probably bought Narayan a lot of time in this tournament.
Yeah.
And look, we've all looked at the control numbers. We all know that Narayan's had one of the luckiest years of all time. And I think there was one year where he seemed to go out almost every time he came in the IPL. So he's probably had some very unlucky seasons before. And so I don't have any issue at all with Narayan with Narayan having a little bit of luck, but it's also bound to finish. And if you don't have Salt at the other end, who knows what's going to happen with that partnership? That's absolutely huge. That's the unknown, right?
Yep.
But the known is
because ever since Salt has left, Gurbaz actually hasn't gotten game time. They had a washout as well, so doesn't help them.
It's been terrible. They probably should have taken Salt out earlier to get Gurbaz in. Just, I mean, they wouldn't have thought of washouts, but, you don't want him stepping on his stumps in the first game or whatever. Yeah. But the one big difference, I think, in their teams is I think Bhuvi's bowled fine, but not peak Bhuvi, obviously. Natarajan's bowled well all the way through. And we have no idea how, the young leg spinner is going to handle the big games. He's bowled okay. He's bowled okay in 2 games, right? I've got no issues with that. But the big difference between these two sides is from the 5th over till about the 15th, 16th over, they can use Chakravarti and Narayan wherever they want.
Yes.
And, one of 2 things isn't going to keep happening. Andre Russell isn't going to keep taking wickets at the rate he is, or Sunil Narayan isn't going to keep scoring the runs that he is, right? But whichever one of that is, hopefully both of them don't drop off at the exact same time. But if it's Andre Russell who keeps taking wickets, they've then got 3+ wicket takers in that period, which just means that against a team that is going really hard, you've got a very good chance of sitting them on their backsides a little bit, right? I think Heinrich Klaasen probably likes facing Chakravarti. I have to think back. I think that was a good matchup off the top of my head.
Yes. He destroyed him. It was a game early on in the season, and they nearly chased down 200 something. Remember?
And Chakravarti wasn't bowling as well then, but I just felt that the length that Chakravarti bowls and the kind of balls he bowls are almost perfect for the way that Klaasen bats. So there is that might change things a little bit, but that having one big lockdown thing. Whereas if you compare that to Sunrisers, you might get 2 good overs from Bhuvi with a new ball. You probably get 2 good overs from Natarajan towards the back end. But a lot of that game, the batters should be on top of them as long as they don't do silly things, right? And that is the big difference between those two sides, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Kolkata have a lot of players who can be clutch as well. Ramandeep is someone who I feel if he was not Indian, let's say he was from Bangladesh or one of the other countries, I feel like he would be playing international cricket. This guy's a proper athlete, feels brilliantly, can roll over his arm. And not just does he hit them big down the ground, he's cheeky. He goes behind the wickets quite frequently as well. Andre Russell, again, that back of the length, short delivery or slower one. That's what's been getting him wickets. But then again, maybe that's what the Sunrisers batters are now expecting. And they're prepared to smash that one out of the park because they're going to go gung-ho. We know that about the Sunrisers. I feel like the big question that needs to be answered here is whether or not Gurbaz can fill Salt's shoes and whether or not Narayan can continue to, or even Narayan and Russell, if they can continue to perform the way they've performed all season. Narayan's having an MVP season. Russell's been very clutch. They are the main contenders for me now if they can just kind of continue to do those things. Because I do slightly favor them ahead of Sunrisers, even though the Sunrisers pace attack has done well. I feel like the more rounded team over here is Kolkata. And I mean, who knows? This is T20 cricket. Anyone could go and take it. But if I was a betting man, and I mean, I will probably be soon when I visit you in London, I would bet my money on KKR.
Yeah, it's weird because earlier when they played, both teams probably had a similar ceiling with batting, with Sunrisers maybe being 2 or 3% higher, right? Yeah. Whereas actually now, it's probably a little bit different without Phil Salt there, right? It probably does come down a little bit more. And so there is a bigger difference there. But the other difference is that they had no bowlers in form outside of Narayan at the start of the season. And now they have 2 or 3 that all will have that middle period sort of locked up for them. So
the seamers have been all right? If you look at Harshit Rana and Vaibhav Arora's season, they've been all right. It's Stark who's the issue.
it's this is a fantastically hilarious situation to be in. That Stark and what's his name? Cummins are heading into this game as two of the liabilities. And you feel bad for Cummins because he has clearly worked on this a lot. And I haven't got Varun to have a look yet. I just wonder if he bowled more to left-handers at the start of the year with that off-cutter and that was the difference. And since he's bowled to right-handers, it just doesn't work as well. I don't know. But either way, it is hilarious that we're coming into this, this thing going, Andre Russell bowling might be okay, but Mitchell Stark, I don't know about him.
Yeah, I mean, in the ODI World Cup, both of these guys, Cummins and Stark, were having a terrible tournament. And then come knockouts, they turned up. So I would not be surprised if, they turn it up in these playoffs as well. We're pretty much done over here with our IPL roundup. Just quickly, then give me a prediction. Give me a winner. I'm going KKR.
Yeah, I'll go KKR. Okay. They're two entertaining and flawed sides. So yeah, I think that's kind of fair.
Yeah, there you go, KKR fans. You guys were upset with us all through this tournament.
But Sunrisers fans have always been upset as well. So
yeah, it's hilarious how those two teams have ended up on top. But anyway, next time we guys see you on Overthrows, well, the IPL would be over and we'll be talking about the playoffs and the final. But that's it for this segment. We'll be taking a short break, after which we'll be discussing Pakistan versus Ireland and some other international cricket that's got on. So you're with Jared and Param on Overthrows. Stay tuned. We'll be back after this short ad.
If you need a VPN, go Nord. Use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a 2-year contract with a discount, plus 4 extra months, plus gifts in some markets. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the show notes. Protect your computer like a blocker protects the stumps with NordVPN today.
Celebrate your cricket heroes with Bodyline t-shirts. Explore their player-inspired tees, featuring legends like Sachin Tendulkar, Brian Lara, and Viv Richards. They also have team-inspired designs and options for hardcore cricket nerds. Their collection is a must-have for the true cricket enthusiast.
Welcome back to Overthrows. You guys are with Behram and Jared. And Pakistan was over in Ireland, the men's team, to play a 3-match T20I series. And the last time we spoke about it on Overthrows, the series was level at 1-1 after Ireland had defeated Pakistan. Well, Pakistan did convincingly win the final T20 as well. They chased the total down, which was 180 odd in 17 overs, which again is a plus because Pakistan generally always leave it towards the end. But Jared, they bowled first again, and I don't get it. Like, for the sake of preparation, you try to fix the one major flaw that you have as a team, which is batting first and putting on totals and not leaving 15 to 20 runs. So maybe they were afraid of losing the series, which is why they've gone this direction, but feels like a bit of a waste, doesn't it?
This is one reason that cricketers don't like me working with them. Because if I was there, I'd be like, it doesn't matter if we lose the series. And they would not agree with that, obviously. But it matters that you put yourself in the most difficult situation. And Ireland's a decent team to do that against. Their top order's not all that explosive, but obviously Lorcan is back in form. And, they've got a lot of big hitters down the order. And they're very good with the new ball. Like, there's a few ways that they can test you. So you're like, great. Well, let's do that. Let's take on Mark Adair with the new ball. Try and get ourselves into a good position. Crush their spinners, because that is not Ireland's thing. And then get to the death and try and put on 50 runs in the last 2 or 3 overs, right? And they haven't done that. And it's another missed opportunity. And, it's... what's the point of them winning this series 2-1 if they're going to play it in the same way that they play every other game, right? It's funny, I was talking to Nathan John, so we've got a Red Inker coming up about Ireland. And he was saying that Ireland's got a very formulaic way of playing T20 cricket. And it was funny watching them play Pakistan, who also has a very formulaic way. You get to the World Cup, and I have said this again and again, it's one thing that Australia is really, really good at. Australia is like, there's no one way to win a game. We have to be able to win it in this way, in this way, in this way.
Yes.
And then when this happens in the tournament, we have to be able to do this and all those sorts of things. We have to, all that sort of stuff. And
Amen to that.
Yeah, and you watch Pakistan and Ireland, and you're looking at two teams who just decide to play one particular way. And the toss can go against you for 4 games in a row in that World Cup. And, it's also really interesting these two teams are playing each other now, because it's probably better for Ireland, this series, than it is for Pakistan, because, you know, I would assume, and USA cricket has come on a little bit, but I would assume that Ireland and Pakistan should beat USA. I haven't seen as much of Canada. I know they have a couple of good players, but I would assume that that's going to be the easier team to beat in that, and I would assume India should beat Pakistan and Ireland, right? Which means it could be very close to being just a straight shootout for the next round between those two games. And I felt that both teams probably didn't put themselves in the best positions to experiment, try things, or go on a fact-finding mission or anything like that.
Yes.
They both were trying to play their best cricket, which, again, we get it, but that's not really what warm-up games are for.
Absolutely not. I mean, T20 bilaterals don't mean anything. You try to, get rid of the chinks in your armor. Pakistan's chinks were very obvious. A blind person could tell you what's wrong with the team, and they wasted that opportunity. And I mean, there are some positives, okay? They chase down big totals quicker than they usually do. Usually you see Pakistan chasing it down in 19.3, right? Or sometimes it's a final ball finish and they're chasing 150. That's Pakistan for you. But they did kind of go hard. I wish they actually had the minerals to try to translate that in the first innings. Now, Babar finally got a score. That's a good thing, right? 75 or 42, got dropped, doesn't matter. Scored 4 sixes in an over of Ben White, which silenced a few people. And I hope that we get to see this version of Babar. Rizwan has actually been great in the power play. It's crazy how they've somewhat, I know it's Ireland, I know it's a chase, but somewhat they have kind of challenged that narrative that is hanging over them like a cloud. And Azam Khan came good with the bat. Even in the final game, he got like 18 unbeaten off 6. But Jared, his keeping was horrendous in the last game. I don't know if he caught it or not, but he missed a stumping, dropped a catch. Both times, Lorcan took both off the bowling of Saim Ayub, and then he gave away a few byes as well. If he's going to be that poor and shoddy behind the stumps, then no matter how many sixes you hit, you could cost your team games, right?
Yeah, I didn't see the last game. I think I saw quite a bit of the first two games. Certainly the one that Ireland won, and then a fair bit of the second one, I think, as well. Yeah, I mean, him finding form is still A+, but you're right. I mean, he's got to be able to keep. We've seen him take some spectacular saves, but he does look to me like a fielder who wicket keeps rather than a wicket keeper, which means he does do a lot of diving, and he makes up for footwork errors with fast hands. And generally, those wicket keepers do actually make more errors. And the reason being is if you're diving, it's very hard to keep your head still ever. And you've got to roll and do everything else. And if you're making your hands, it's such a weird thing. But if you're teaching young wicket keepers, hands don't matter forever. The thing that matters so much is footwork. And that's where you really want to start as a wicket keeper. And he just keeps like in that sort of Johnny Bairstow style of my hands will catch up to everything. And it's like, until they don't.
And I mean, you've got Rizwan in the wings, right, who's also picked up form with the bat. So, I mean, it's not like there were no positives. You've got Babar and Rizwan playing cricket like they've never played it before. Azam came good with the bat, at least, even if he had a really poor game behind the stumps. And then Imad Wasim, gave away 72 runs and took 2 wickets in 10 overs in this series. With that size of boundary, Clontarf was tiny, right? So, I mean, that's a positive. Shaheen took 3 for 14 in the final T20I. So there were some good things, but I don't know. I still feel very, very unconvinced with this Pakistan team. And the fielding, oh my God. The only thing that saved them in the end was that Ireland even fielded more poorly than they did. Fakhr dropped a dolly.
Well, wait a minute. What about that incredible field? Oh, no. Actually, that wasn't the Pakistan series. That is versus the Dutch. Did you see that thing where 3 Ireland players saved a boundary together?
No, I did not.
It was, I can't remember who the fielders were, any of them, but the first fielder went up and went to flick the ball back from about a millimeter in and flicked it back to the other fielder, but he was coming in to save it as well. So then he flicked it back to a third one. It was like, remember that Bangladesh test match where everyone was running off? It was like that, except they did it properly and it was brilliant. Sorry, it was absolutely nothing to do with your point, but I just remembered it when you said Ireland fielding.
Well, I mean, in the first game of the series, Ireland's fielding was fantastic. I remember Barry McCarthy injured himself. That's how well he fielded. But Graham Hume then dropped a 3rd catch as well in the last T20. Even Dockrell dropped Babar. And basically, apart from Pakistan's point of view, apart from one screamer that Rizwan took in the deep, there was no good fielding efforts, right? Lots of drops, lots of ground fielding errors. That's an area Pakistan really need to fix quickly. And one thing, which is my last Pakistan point, and I really want to pick your brain over here. What do they do about that top four? I don't even know what's the best top four at this point, right?
Waqar Zaman is so confusing to me because I don't really know. I don't know if it's a form thing. I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I've always found him a really, really interesting player because at his best, Waqar Zaman might be the Johnson Charles of Pakistan, right? Where when everything's kind of working, you're just like, well, that's clearly an international player. But the minute like one little thing goes wrong, you're just like, oh my God, is he ever going to hit this ball off the square? I don't know how he fits in this top four, but I'm also not sure what the top four should be anyway. So yeah, it's very, very interesting. And just to move it on to Ireland as well. Graham Hume is not playing in the series in the Netherlands at the moment. And Nathan Johns told me today it was because he couldn't get a visa to the Netherlands. So you remember my plan about why there needs to be an agency who just get cricketers visas. I'm just saying it's still there.
Yeah, Mookie in the comments is asking me about Sai Mayub. Look, I think Sai Mayub has a high ceiling, but he's a developing cricketer. I'm fine with them giving Sai a longer rope. But then again, to Jared's point, I don't know if Waqar can bat at 4. Like the one game in which he performed, he was batting in the power play. Don't forget that, right? That's not the phase that you've selected him for. And Pakistan's management won't get this. They're like, yeah, he performed at number 4. I'm telling you, I can say this with certainty. That's how they're looking at this. What I would do is whenever there's a slow surface, you've got to play Shadab and you've got to bat him at 4. That is the one guy in the middle overs who I trust versus spin along with Azam Khan. But Shadab has the experience, and I think there's a world where I feel like he might not even make the squad at this point. Who's to say?
If Pakistan ever name a squad, because at this stage they're 50-50 to name it after the World Cup starts.
But yeah, I mean, there are lots of questions still hanging around Pakistan, and knowing them, they'll bowl first every time versus England as well. They're not going to try and prepare for the World Cup. And that's my biggest beef with Pakistan currently, that you're playing for the sake of results, not preparation. And your results are even not that good. You 1-2-1 versus Ireland. I mean, whatever. But talking about the Irish, and I'm going to transition into the Netherlands tri-series with this as well, because we know that Scotland, Netherlands, and Ireland are playing one currently, a T20 tri-series in the Netherlands. So Lachlan Tucker, fantastic form that he's shown in the series versus Pakistan. He's carried it over to the Netherlands, or in the Netherlands game as well. He scored, 73 or 41 versus Pakistan. Wrecked Hassan Ali, destroyed him. Had back-to-back 50s in that series as well. Was captain in that last game. First ever captaincy display. And then his unorthodoxy is something I'm a fan of. Backed it up with a 40 of 30 versus the Dutch. He could really be the real deal. And we've seen him kind of, growing as a cricketer. Him and Harry Tector are the future.
Yes, there's questions on both of them. Lorcan's been in pretty bad form between the last World Cup and this World Cup. Luckily, Pakistan got him back in form, and he's a fantastic player. Tector just is too slow, and I think he will develop because he's big and huge, and I think he'll be able to hit 4s and 6s. But there is an element of Cameron Green about him in that it just takes him a while to unfurl and get to the point where he can start hitting 4s and 6s. But they've got the talent there, and then there's a bunch of hitters. I do think this idea of kind of playing within yourself until you get to the end and you can release, Adair and Delaney and Dockrell to all slog. It's like,
and Camphor.
Yeah, and Camphor. Well, there's heaps of them, right?
Yeah.
But I just think if you're going to bat to number 8 or number 9, tell your top order to go a little bit harder sometimes. Would be another one. But I think it feels like a lot of their guys, they're finding form at a good time. And
yes,
they're probably set up to make, outside of really good spin bowling teams. Luckily, they're, India will destroy them with spin. But the other 3 teams they're playing shouldn't destroy them with spin. And they're not going up against Sri Lanka this time, which always destroys them with spin. But other than that, I think they're set up to make 165 to 200 quite regularly. And then they have to match that with new ball wickets, right? And if they can match that with new ball wickets, or, smart bowling in the middle, they can put some pressure on teams. That's what they did. I don't know if you saw the Netherlands game yesterday. So Netherlands game yesterday was fascinating because I was watching it, and Netherlands were massive favourites. And I was looking at the pitch going, I don't know. I think this is every time they scored a run, it just looked like there was a risk, and they were about to lose a wicket. And I remember thinking to myself that I had a real hunch that Ireland would do well. And then I walked out of the room for about 10 or 15 minutes, and I came back in, and Ireland were massively on top. And yet, Tom Pringle, son of Chris Pringle, almost won the game for the Netherlands by just hitting 6 after 6 at the death. And I think he needed 4 or 6 off the last ball and hit it back to the bowler. And that's the problem with Ireland. New ball, they can take wickets. Middle overs, they can be quite clever, and they can sometimes clamp it down, but they can't stop anyone at the death, right? They just don't have death bowling at all. I looked up Adair. I think outside of Andre Russell and Jason Holder, he has the highest economy at the death of the guys who've bowled a lot in the last I think it was last 3 years I was looking at. And those other two guys are all-rounders.
I mean, if you look at the last game versus Pakistan, Adair's figures were 3 for 28. And I can promise you that maybe like more than half of those runs came in his final over, right? That's how good he was in the power play. But I mean, he's just hit 49 of 24 with the bat, so he does not need to worry about his place.
No, I mean, he's a really good player. The problem is that they have a lot of guys who are good with that new ball, and they don't really have the other guys afterwards. And Josh Little can take wickets at the death.
Yes.
And I think Josh Little's probably at his best bowling that random over in the middle. But he's going to take wickets at the death, but the problem is that he goes for runs as well. He's not the most economical bowler. There's just, I don't know how they're going to lose game. They should have lost that game to the Netherlands, at which I think the Netherlands were 150 to 1 at one point in that game, and they went within a single hit of winning that game. You should not be allowing, them to be able to come back so easily in that situation. And it was clear as day. I mean, you know me. I put money on Netherlands. I think I put money on Netherlands when they were 25 to 1 and 100 to 1, because I was like, I still believe in them to be able to come back here. And it really tells you what we're talking about here with Ireland. It is just a little bit more one-dimensional. They got themselves ahead in the game, and they still couldn't, win it safely.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I didn't catch that game, but I saw that Finn Hand took 3 for 18. So tell me more about him. I've seen him bowl in that one test match where he made his debut. And I feel like if they find one more seamer along with Little, who'll obviously make this attack better, and Mark Adair is good. Craig Young, he's all right, but not maybe that level. Is Finn Hand perhaps someone who could develop into that quality seamer?
The first thing I know about him is his name's not Finn, and it's
Oh, isn't it?
pronounced. No, I know the way it looks, but it's pronounced Fian. I think Fian.
Oh, interesting.
Hand? Yeah, no. It's everyone did it in the last World Cup as well. And the only reason I know that is names I really have troubles with, I write down on my whiteboard, and I can't quite see it, but I could still see the F from where I wrote it. It doesn't help me, but at least I've still got Punjab written up to stop me saying Punjab. No, he's probably not going to play in the World Cup, right? He's probably not going to be in the starting 11 because Little's going to come back into this side. And so I don't think... I think he's got talent. I don't think he's probably a good squad member, if that makes sense. He's a little bit away from being a top player, but it shows that they've got some depth and, they have some versatility. They've got 2 leg spin options as well, right? And they can bowl Dockrell. But they're missing a couple of really, really key players, and they probably need one of Sterling or Balbirnie to have a great tournament. But we are talking about, honestly, if they beat Pakistan, they will probably qualify. I think once it gets to the West Indies, their inability to bowl spin and their inability to face spin will be really, really brutal for them. But if they get there, they're not going to care.
I mean, they could very well spoil Pakistan's party. I firmly believe it's well within the realms of possibility. So yeah, maybe a good spoiler team, and when we'll keep an eye out for Ireland. They did, of course, defeat the Netherlands in this series as well before their game today versus Scotland got pushed out.
Scotland was called off, wasn't it? It was raining all day.
That was rained out. But I mean, even versus the Netherlands, like you said, it was like a thriller. Coming to the Netherlands, they defeated Scotland quite comfortably by 41 runs. They are, of course, the home team as well. And 2 seamers are basically the guys who I feel are kind of spearheading their efforts. Logan van Beek, 3 for 18. Vivian Kingma, who I haven't seen for a bit. Happy to see him. He took 4 for 21. These guys were the stars of the show versus Scotland. Do you feel like, this is another team that maybe lacks the firepower, but does have enough individual talent to maybe become a spoiler team?
I think they have at their best, and I haven't looked at have they released their squad?
Can they defeat South Africa again?
Have they released their World Cup squad? I haven't.
Yes, they have.
I don't think I've got.
And both of those guys have made it. Logan van Beek obviously played the ODI World Cup as well. We know that he's good. And Vivian Kingma, I remember Pakistan toured the Netherlands a while back, played 3 ODIs, and he tormented them with the new ball. So I do rate him as a new ball bowler.
I think Ryan Klein was supposed to play. They've obviously got Klaassen should be playing. Who else would they have? The other guy. There's another seamer, right arm seamer, who's reasonably quick. Vivian Kingma is probably a step back, and so I always think with them, you want Logan to be your third best seamer, and if he's your second best seamer, I think that's a weaker side. So when they're at their absolute best, Logan struggles to get into that side, and that's great because that just shows how much quality they have with their bowling. Paul van Meekeren was sensational in that last World Cup.
Yes.
Right? Absolutely sensational in that last World Cup. And so you want one other great seamer with him. I don't know if either of those guys can do it. But I love the way that Logan van Beek plays his cricket and everything else.
And the way he dances.
And they've got Aryan Dutt bowled quite well. They've got Roll-Off available to them.
They don't have Roll-Off. So
Is he not in the squad? Am I looking at the wrong squad?
Yeah.
Oh, wait. I might be
Roll-Off
looking at the wrong.
Roll-Off and Colin Ackerman could not get into the squad because of their commitments in county cricket. So that's actually a big blow. Yeah.
Sorry, I am looking at the wrong squad. I'll take everything I just said back. So let me just have a look at the seamers again. So who did you say was the seam? So Klaassen is listed in the squad. So they've got Baz the leader, Klaassen, Van Beek, Van Meekeren. So yeah, I don't mind that. I think the biggest issue, their biggest issue is their top order. Max O'Dowd probably, even though he's done really well in a lot of World Cups, is probably just a little bit slow. And Vikramjit is hasn't developed the way that they would hope he would. I still think he'll be a really good player, but he's a little bit further back than where they would need him to be. There's a couple of newer names here that I don't know as much about who are probably playing because, as you said, Roloff's not playing. Ackerman's not playing.
Yes.
I think there's a seamer as well that I'm missing there. But there are some good players here. I think
Engelbrecht. That seamer is Engelbrecht.
Is he a seamer? I thought.
Do you remember Engelbrecht, the South African?
Yeah, I don't think he's a seamer.
Wasn't he like a seam bowling all rounder? Or do I have this completely memorized incorrectly?
No, I mean you might. I'm trying to remember back. I thought he bowled spin, but I can't. I don't think I've seen him bowl that much, so I don't know all that much about him. But if you look at it, it's missing a couple of the bigger names, and so I think at their best they have that ability. If Logan bats at 8, right, and also Tim Pringle now, as we've just seen him whack Ireland everywhere, and he bats at 9. They have the ability to bat quite deep, but they don't have really a dynamic way of starting unless Vikramjit comes good. And then they don't have if you've got Klaassen, Van Beek, and Meekeren in the side, you can't fit a specialist spinner in the side, right? And without Roll-Off there, Roll-Off overcame that for them before, right? So it's not as perfect as we've seen, but yeah, they've been hit massively. And just worth pointing this out, because a lot of people get this wrong, by the way, is people go, oh, the counties aren't releasing them. Counties will often release these players, but they get paid less to play in the World Cup anyway. And then on top of that, if they're not automatic selections sometimes, they don't want to be in a situation where they're not playing for their counties, because that's where they make their money. They don't make their money playing for the Dutch team, and they're professional athletes. And some of these players coming towards the end of their career and probably want to get 1 or 2 more extra years out of it. And so we're in an awkward situation, but that's where we are.
I mean, they've been here before where a lot of their players weren't available and they've done decently well. Last T20 World Cup, they were one of the stories of that World Cup. So I hope that there's another upset in there somewhere. I'll definitely be tuning into their game versus South Africa, for instance. But anyway, that kind of wraps up all of our men's international cricket that we were supposed to talk about today. We'll be taking a short break. And after that, we'll be discussing Pakistan's women taking on England in England. And yeah, so you're watching Uncovered. Overthrows with Behram and Jared.
Something.
Yes, stay tuned. We'll be back after this short ad.
If you watch this channel, you'll love us on Main, where we do deep dives into the greatest cricket stories every week at Good Areas. How did Virat Kohli play that shot? What is so weird about Neil Wagner? And explaining the incredible misery of being a New Zealand opening batter. Visit our Good Areas site today. Want to show the world that you not only love cricket, but that you know the game deeply? Well, you need a Bodyline t-shirt. In fact, at Bodyline t-shirts, you can actually buy a t-shirt about Bodyline, but also tees inspired by the greatest players in our game. Head to Bodyline t-shirts today.
Welcome back to Overthrows. You guys are with Behram and Jared. And Jared, this is a series that you've been following really, really closely. Pakistan's women have been over in England and they've played 3 T20Is. They've got 3 ODIs remaining. But, last time we spoke, they just played that first game and we kind of broke that down. Ever since, England have been dominant, yes, but you saw Pakistan, after they folded for 79 in the second game, they scored 140 plus in the third one. I did not think they had it in them to score more than around 125. And some of their batting has been impressive. Alia came back in the team. Nida got some runs. The openers did well. They have this issue of that they have like 4 openers in that batting order. And this is life after Bisma and Javeria, who were mainstays in that team. I think the power play batting and the new ball bowling has been impressive. Wahid Akhtar as well had England 11 for 4 in the first game. So some positives to take forward. And I mean, you've got to factor in that these girls have never played in front of crowds like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been really impressed with them. They have taken wickets. They've put England under pressure a couple of times with the ball. Probably let themselves off the hook at times, especially with their death bowling, which has fallen off the cliff. Was it the second game when they were bowled out for 79? Was there 2 or 3 runouts in that?
Yeah, something like that.
Like if you take those runouts out and they would have scored over 120 again in that one. They've absolutely smashed England in the power play. They have made England look ridiculous in the power play all the way through. And then after that, they've only had 1 game where they've kicked on and there's issues with their batting lineup, but I've been really impressed with them, all things considered. They're just nowhere near England's quality, and we're more than aware of that. And once England sort of bring on Sarah Glenn and Sophie Eccleston, it just looks like a completely different game. And, the Pakistani women playing the sweep shot like they have never seen a sweep shot before.
And that's the English women are playing it just as well. Like it's a complete opposite sort of scenario, right?
Yeah, and England, every time an England player gets down to sweep, she smacks it for 4, right? So it's that inability to be able to rotate very good spinners and just keep some pressure off yourself, because I think they played the seamers pretty well. I think it was Firelight got one with a short ball in that other game, so occasionally the paces got to them, but mostly the England seamers haven't been particularly good, and Pakistan have capitalized on it. So there's lots of really good signs for this team. The only bad sign I can see at the moment is they're not particularly good with the ball spinning away from right-handers, and they're about to go to Bangladesh for a World Cup.
They've had those troubles for a bit now because even the ball spinning in, man. I mean, Hayley Matthews destroyed them as well, right?
Yeah.
With bat and ball. So
I thought they played Charlie Dean okay, though, of the 3 spinners. Now, she's not, she's just not on Hayley Matthews' level. I don't know, but I thought they played Charlie Dean okay, whereas the minute the ball was spinning away from the England bowlers, it was like, it felt like they should have been out LBW every single ball.
Yeah. I mean, Hypocost gave us that stat, right? That since the start of 2023, the best strike rate and bowling average amongst all, full members in WT20Is, England's spin attack. Their trio of Sarah Glenn, Sophie Eccleston, and Charlie Dean. Sarah Glenn, 4 for 12, 2 for 10, none for 21. What a series. Plus, she's got this swag about her. I love to just see her operate. She's got this like cool and I don't know. It's just she resonates this sort of energy. And Sophie, we all know that she's like already a legend. We have a Hypocost fact over here where he says, where has it gone? She says that as well as already becoming England's women's highest wicket taker, Sophie Eccleston has the most wickets by any woman by the age of 25, which is 80. And that's insane. And she too, 1 for 17, 3 for 11, 1 for 19. Both of these spinners both spun it the same way, and they completely shattered Pakistan. Danny Wyatt was belligerent in one of those knocks. She got to 50 around, the 34th delivery, and then ended up with 87 or 48. Went nuts after that. And I mean, that's finally a good sign for England because her form's been a wee bit dodgy.
Yeah, I didn't think that they batted particularly well in this series at all, really. I mean, you have to give some credit to Pakistan as well, but you know, any form that they could find in this series, I think, was quite impressive to them. There was, I think that was the game where they went ballistic at the end, wasn't it?
Yes.
And sort of took it away. But again, they weren't all that impressive when earlier on. So they'll take any form at the moment, and I don't think they've had a very impressive series outside of the fact that they happen to have two spinners that have made Pakistan look silly. Now, they have those bowlers, so that isn't going away. But I think if I was, involved with the England women's camp, I'd be wondering why my seamers weren't putting the ball in the right area. I'd be, wondering why we lost so many wickets and put ourselves in positions that better teams probably would have beaten us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, England's slow bowlers, or particularly those two spinners, did well. But I think Pakistan had some positives with respect to the pace department. Wahid Akhtar in that first game, 2 for 20. And then Diana Baig in these last two games, 1 for 24 and 3 for 26, which are her career best figures. Hypercost has some stats over here in the comments which back this up. England's, batting against pace, 7.48 runs per over. Pakistan, 7.34 runs per over, right?
Wow.
So Pakistan almost match England there, but the batting against spin, England's runs per over is 8.35 and Pakistan is 5.31. And that's where the series is basically lost and whitewashed. And I still think that Pakistan should look at the series and think, okay, yeah, we could have won a game over here, could have upset England.
Yeah,
And
I definitely think they should be thinking that.
yeah. If they can figure out a better batting order and kind of define roles better, they've got this young girl who's not even in the squad called Aroob. She bowls leg spin and can hit. Those are the sort of people or women that you need to bring into the team. But anyway, let's see what they produce for us in the ODI series. That wraps up our itinerary for overthrows. Let's have our super chats. Time for our super chats. And we have 8, which is a small number compared to the ones that we've had in the past. All right, Bart 8881 says, Kudrat ka Nizam backing RCB this time around. Abso-fucking-lutely it is.
I'm disappointed. When I saw that message come up, I was hoping he was coming up with the Bengaluru version of that. But we're just taking the Pakistan one. Maybe we should just use that for everything. We've got it now.
Yeah. No, the rain, when that stopped, I was like, yeah, this is definitely Kudrat ka Nizam. Anyway, ABCDEF says, how much would India's fringe players like Patidar, Abhishek, Sai, etc. improve if they were allowed to play in other leagues? And with IPL owners owning franchises outside the IPL, do you see this changing? Fantastic question.
Yeah, I do. Yes, they would improve. It's,
obviously. Yeah.
It's a huge thing, makes you more rounded. Also, it's a little thing. We have it in the IPL, but in the IPL, if you're a good Indian player, you're probably going to have a pretty decent contract for a long period of time, right? Overseas leagues do not work that way, right?
Yeah.
I talked to Rahul Dravid of my book the other day, and he was talking about playing for Kent and the pressure of being an overseas pro playing for Kent. And you're like, you're Rahul Dravid, but it's a different kind of pressure. Those things really help, right? And then you've got the conditions and living outside the Indian cricket bubble, all those sorts of things. I think it's an issue going ahead, but I think that the IPL owners are so powerful that they will just take over and they will. I'd be shocked if they hadn't bought these leagues without the thought that they'll be able to get Indian players, not all Indian players, and maybe not Indian players over the age of 24, but I think they are thinking they will certainly be able to get some Indian players into some of these leagues around the world.
I mean, thinking about Sai Sudarshan, if he gets that sort of development where he gets to play on different surfaces across the world, that would be great for him, right? And I do see a future where that could happen, right? Because India will dominate the franchise market. We know that will happen. It's almost inevitable. It's like Thanos. That's what it is. Anyway, Sankalp Verma asks, and Jared, this is directed at you. What are the odds and why that you'll take to bet huge on RCB winning the league? Purely as a betting specialist, not the cricket analyst.
So if I was going to bet on them winning the league, it was when they were playing Chennai, they were 10-1. That was the bet to make. They're now into 4-1. So halfway through that, I can't remember when it was, but it was like in that game, they were at 10-1. I thought that was the time when it was a decent bet because I kind of figured that they were going to beat Chennai at that stage. So 4-1 is too short for me because they have to win 3 games in a row. They've already won 6 in a row, is it, Bayram?
Yes, 6 in a row. That is correct.
6 in a row is huge in T20 cricket. 7 in a row is massive. 8 in a row is almost unheard of. 9 in a row, I just can't see it happening. So
Yeah.
I think they're way too short to win the title. There might be some bookies where you can get them slightly different odds than that. But if you want the best bet is probably, I'm just having a look now. Probably the best bet is Rajasthan, because they are at 7s, and you might even be able to get them at 8-1 in some places. They have just lost 4 in a trot, 5 in the trot.
Yes, four in a trot, and also washout. So
Yeah,
they haven't won in a long time.
They haven't won in a long time, but they're a good enough team to go 3 in a row because we know how good they are. So if you wanted to put a bet on, but I don't think betting on the winner is a good bet. So one of the things about betting on cricket is you don't just bet on everything. You bet on the things when the odds are in your favor. So when I'm watching the Netherlands and I know they're on a small ground against Ireland, and Ireland has bad death bowling, and it comes up that they're 120-1, right? Me putting a couple of pounds on that I'm not going to miss on that particular day at all is a very good bet. Unfortunately for me, I was live on the score, doing the scoreboard when the game was on, so I couldn't cash out on my brilliant bet. But that is a very, very good bet. And then when it came down to being a 6 off the last ball, that's not a good bet at that stage, right? Like when the odds are even, you have no idea what's going to happen in that next ball. So that is what, being a trader or gambler or whatever it is in those sorts of things is. So if you want to know what the best bet is for the title, I would say none of those are good bets.
Vibes, Sankalp. Vibes which is what will make them win. Also, just before we take this chat, Varun has told us in the comments that the Kannada version of Kudrat Ka Nizam is Prakratiya Niyama.
It's not as fun, is it?
Same
at least we have it now. We have it. And and what more could we ask for?
Exactly. Sankalp Verma again says, given Shivam Dube's performance since World Cup selection, isn't it better judgment to now replace him, given his technical flaw and pressure situation awareness being exposed? There are no matches to correct things now. I mean, yes, in hindsight, you can say Patidar had a better tournament, right? A similar profile sort of player. But have you seen what Shivam Dube achieved prior? I still think that he is peaking in his career. And sure, the short ball troubled him at the start and at the end. But in between, he was smashing pace pretty good too. So I'd still take him.
Well, there's a few things here. One, he's not going to face as many short balls because you can't bowl 2 in and over. So straight away, that should help him. Secondly, Patidar is fantastic. You're not going to get many people who love him more than I do. But he's not left-handed. And they probably also wanted a left-hander, would be my guess there. Technical flaw, he had the technical flaw before. So if you've already selected him with the technical flaw, you can't suddenly change your mind. Pressure situation, he had a bad innings, man. Like, these things happen. He was out of form. He looked out of form for a long time before that last game. I don't like picking World Cup squads on form, right? And I don't like picking teams in general on form unless there is something that has happened to that player to make them fall off a cliff that you cannot fix. Right? Or their confidence is gone. Like, if their confidence is gone, obviously at that stage, there's not much you can do, right? Like, they're gone, they're gone. But so I would look at it very, very differently from that point of view. I understand why they've chosen him, and I understand how they want to use him. They just have to hope that he finds form at the right time. And it could be that for that first 4 games, he doesn't find form, and he keeps being terrible, right? And then maybe they hit a semi-final, and he suddenly smashes 80 off 25. Right? All these things are very possible with Shivam Dube. But also, if you want someone who's going to go out there and whack it, whether it's him or Abhishek Sharma or Smashatosh or any of these guys, you cannot expect them to be consistent. There should be peaks and troughs with that kind of batting.
I would back him. I don't know why there was a guy early in the comments who was cussing me for targeting Dube. Have you been watching this show? I'm like a one-man Shivam Dube fan club, dude.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, we all like Dube. He just dropped off his form, right? Didn't he make like 2 golden ducks in a row or something at one stage?
Yes, both against Rahul Chahar.
Yeah, like,
which is his matchup.
and so that's another reason why I'm not as worried about his form, right? Because that's such a random thing to have happen to a player. If you make a golden duck, I don't actually consider that bad form. That's just first ball. Look at Travis Head's shot the other day, right? It was first ball. He was facing, was it Ashdeep?
Yes.
Yeah. He's expecting the ball to swing away. It doesn't swing away. And his bat's not in the right spot because it's first ball and he hasn't quite got his feet and his hands moving together in a symbiosis, right? And so his hands kind of go out. His feet get stuck. He's expecting the ball to swing away. And none of that happens, right? And he gets bowled. By the way, Rob Barron on Cricket 8 bet on that at 33-1. A wicket first ball of the innings.
Wow.
And so, when you see something like that happen, I don't say, oh, Travis Head's in bad form. I say he made a golden duck. So some of that Shivam Dubé stuff is that, right? The other side of it is he had a brilliant first half of the season and a terrible second half of the season. That sometimes is just going to happen.
Yeah, that's fair. Anyway, Sankalp Verma with another question. He has a lot of questions today. He says it's more of a wagon wheel question. Rarely catches you live, Jared, but now that he's asking, how do you rate and select Krunal Pandya? Can you share his true average, true strike rate? If you have, hoping it's excellent. Varun, help us out with that while Jared answers this question.
Yeah, I think Varun probably has already done that one. I would hope anyway. But look, he's a defensive bowler who at his best was a very attacking batter, and he's become a bit of a defensive batter as well. And I think it's part of the reason, the way that they've been using him and everything else. So if you want a defensive bowler who can give you some kind of batting bonus, he certainly does that. He's not ever going to take a lot of wickets. I think there was one game this year where he took a few, but in a long period of time, he's never going to take a lot of wickets. And his batting, I would have to go through, I defer to Varun here. I would say his true strike rate this year would be really bad with the bat, but it's because they kept sending him up the order to be a firefighter. It's a bit like Sam Curran. Him and Sam Curran probably have terrible strike rates this year because they would send up the order in terrible situations, and that was how they were told to play. I think at his very best, he's a very good boundary hitter. And I think we need to see, a lot more of that in the future.
So we've got the true overall average and true overall strike rate. True average is minus 0.62, and true strike rate is minus 4.47. So yeah, I mean, it's below the average. But honestly, you've got so many players in that mold, right? You've got your Akshars, you've got your Jadejas, and they're always kind of fighting tooth and nail to show us which one's the best. And I mean, Jadeja can field the best, so that gives him a very big plus. Anyway, Sri Gutta asks, baseball is national sport for many countries from US, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Panama to Taiwan, and extremely popular in Korea and Japan. Cricket is dead beyond Indian subcontinent. You can say that cricket isn't as popular outside of the Indian subcontinent as much as it is inside of it, but it's still alive.
It is not dead. I mean, baseball would absolutely kill for cricket's social media, number of fans, Google searches, and everything else. This is the most nonsensical thing I've heard. Cricket is the second biggest sport in the world when it comes to Google searches. It is probably arguably, if not the second biggest sport in the world, then second or third. Baseball just had the biggest conflict, not even conflict. Baseball just had its biggest issue of all time where fans were turning away from it. It is certainly not a national sport in the USA anymore. It might be the America's game or America's pastime. It's the third biggest sport in America, right?
Yeah.
Which is the place
think about the diaspora, Shri. There's so many Indians and Pakistanis and Bangladeshis and Sri Lankans living outside of the Indian subcontinent. They reproduce like crazy.
I don't think people understand how big cricket is, honestly. Like, it is absolutely huge. And when T20 came in, I can promise you, almost every other sport in the world had a meeting, and I know this based on a lot of people from other sports who've talked to me, going, how do we design our own T20, right? Baseball had to speed itself up because it was getting too slow. It is nowhere near the level of cricket as an international sport, but it is very heavily dependent on one part of the world. But it's the second biggest sport in Australia. It's probably the second biggest sport in New Zealand. Third biggest sport maybe in South Africa, second biggest in England probably. If we start to go through all these different places, second or third biggest in the West Indies again. Like, it's pretty, and it's growing to other countries that are starting to get involved with it. Cricket, I don't think cricket's ever been in a more healthy situation, and the idea that it's going backwards is America is thinking of bringing cricket into the Olympics. They're not doing that for any other reason than the fact that they know that will give them more publicity and more media and everything else.
Also, go watch that episode of Bluey, Shri. I mean, cricket is global now, right?
Exactly.
Rusty, it was Rusty. Also, Jared, Varun has said that this year Krunal Pandya's true strike rate is minus 45.96.
Yep. And if you send him out to do bad jobs and he's not equipped to do it, you'll get that.
Yeah. Sankalp Verma again asks, approaching Gautam Gambhir for coach, isn't it also what's wrong with Indian cricket apart from what you said on Crick 8? This is a topic for our Uncovered, but sure, go ahead and answer it.
Let's talk about it on Uncovered. We mentioned Sunkalp there.
Yes.
He's a very... I think he's an interesting person to be offering, and I don't think he's the right person to coach the Indian cricket team. But I will say this, from chats I've had, it's the overseas players that really don't handle him very well, whereas the Indian players seem to like him a little bit more. So, there's that's an insider's view I was told recently, randomly.
All right. Anish with the next question says, India versus Pakistan in New York. What's going to happen, guys? I mean, no one's ever played at New York. The ground at Nassau County just literally got created. But I mean, if you're a betting man, put your money on India. Look at the World Cup record, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have no idea what kind of wicket we're going to get there. It's a drop-in wicket. It's, who knows? It could be fun.
Scenes on Uncovered if Pakistan win that one. I promise you that. Path right winger, who always has a super chat for us, says, as a KKR fan, always mentions that as well. I even know Path right winger is a KKR fan now. He says, am I allowed to fantasize about Stark's Watson-esque comeback for the big game as is in his Aussie blood, or is he fundamentally damaged? DC and RR had the best mega auction. Oh, is this the next question?
Okay. I don't know. I thought it was he's asked two questions. Come on, Path. One at a time. We're struggling, Path, we're struggling as much as we can here.
Yeah. I think I just said that earlier in the show that you never know with Stark and Cummins, man. They did it in the ODI World Cup. Who knows?
Did Stark have a good World Cup final? Was it the semi-final he bowled well?
I think it was a semi-final in which he bowled exceptionally well, and he was all right in the final as well.
Yeah, I can't remember his bowling off the top of my head in the final. I know he had one good game at the end. Look, the thing with Stark is, against this team like the Sunrisers, if they can get enough wickets through Narayan and Russell and Chakravarti, maybe some new ball wickets, Stark becomes a huge thing, because if he starts to bowl to those guys down the order, the 7, 8, 9, Stark could clean up that. There was a team this year that he went through at the end, and he hasn't had that many chances to be able to do it, but they gave him one over in his other game path. I think they've lost complete faith in him. So, I don't really know what the future is for him, but he's a really good player. There's always a chance of having a one good game, right? If Nokia was in the same position, I'd say the same about him, and he was even worse than Stark this year.
Path did not have a second question, or was he trying to get two questions with one super chat?
He's out.
Path,
we've talked about Path enough.
Yeah. We cannot do that, Path. Anyway, Gotham Dash has a question for me, Def Mango. That's how you write it, Behra Arm. Do you think that Chelsea are on the way back? Who is the Todd Bowley of cricket franchise owners? Lots of money, no clue what they're doing. Idiotic sound bites. I don't think Chelsea's coming back. I think when you lost the oligarchy, thanks to the Ukrainian war, you kind of lost Chelsea's ethos, because Roman Abramovich was a guy who would just keep changing managers and would target trophies. And you know what? You look at his tenure, you got trophies. Chelsea have lost that, and the American owners don't really know what they're doing in football. I don't trust the American ownership at all, even if I look at other clubs. So Todd Bowley of the cricket franchise world, who's that one owner who spends money like crazy and has no idea? Punjab? Preeti Zinta? I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know if we have.
The Sunrisers girl. It's her. It's come off this year, but I don't think she had a game plan when she was buying all those overseas players. Because even before the IPL, we were talking about how do you fit those guys in? What combinations do you play?
Okay.
So I think, she's the one. It has to be.
I mean, it's different anyway, right? Because I know that the salary cap is more optional, but there is actually a salary cap. So, in football, you kind of go that way, right? Where you have to do that. And I think it's one reason why some of the American owners probably struggle a little bit more with football, because their mind is not open enough to the way that football owners quite often think about things, which is we'll just keep buying things until it works. It's not quite how American sports work in that way.
Yeah.
Outside of baseball. Baseball probably is the one where you do that.
I think what Todd Bowley also tried to do was Moneyball, and he has this amortization strategy where he'll buy top young talent, and if they work out, the valuation goes up. What he forgot over there is that experience matters. You bring in pedigreed people, and they win you trophies. The youngsters alone can't really do anything on their own. So, I mean, that's just my 2 cents on it. This is not a football podcast, though, Gotham. Anyway,
Certainly
that
not a
wraps
basketball
up.
podcast after what happened to the
Yeah.
Nuggets last night.
Oh, they lost Game 7?
They lost Game 7.
I'm sorry about that. My condolences, Jared. Are you
No,
with
it's
the
all right. I mean,
Timberwolves
to be honest,
now?
I've already got one more title out of in my life than I ever thought I would out of the Nuggets, so
Yeah.
it's fine. And I thought this was the year that they were a lot more susceptible to being knocked off. But it was a crazy series. So it was a great 7-match series. I can't complain about that. It was absolutely. They were up by 20 points in that Game 7 and lost it at home.
Wow.
Everything went on in that series. So
Who's winning this year?
Well, I think Nuggets were the only team that could beat the Celtics, but Minnesota's played brilliantly as well, so they've got a good chance. But I thought Nuggets would beat the Celtics, but the Celtics could beat every other side. So I would probably lean towards the Celtics as well, especially now as the Timberwolves, or the Western Conference is just so. These teams are playing so many games against each other. They're going to be tired by the time they get to the East.
Yeah, that's fair. Also, we've got one super chat. Path right winger has paid for that super chat. He's not cheating anymore, and we'll take it and then call it a day on overthrows. He says DC and RR had the best mega auction. Does CSK and GT's success in this cycle prove that team environment is the #1 win predictor, barring injuries in the long run?
I can't remember the mega auction because it was 100 years ago. Look, there's no one thing that tells you about win predicting, right? No one knew that this was going to be such a dramatically different tournament than any other year. What you have to do, whether you're an athlete or you're an administrator, is continually try and make correct decisions and put yourself in the right area. And that's why CSK have been so good over a long period of time, right? Is because we might not always agree with everything they do and they might have made some missteps, but overall they think very cleverly about these things and they put themselves within a chance to do it. That's all you can do as a team. And if more owners understood that, it would be a lot better.
All right, then that wraps up this episode of Overthrows. If you guys liked it, do give us a like on YouTube and subscribe to both this YouTube channel and Jared's other channel on YouTube. And a quick reminder, you can go to goodareas.co and bookmark that webpage. That is your one-stop shop for all of our written work, our podcasts, and our videos. We'll catch you next week with another episode of Overthrows. That is all for now. Goodbye. And for those of you who are with us on the live broadcast on YouTube, stick around because after this short ad, we'll be coming with episode 85 of the Uncovered podcast.
If you have always wanted to turn your passion for sports into a career, well, I have the course for you. Fans with Laptops is the multimedia course that I came up with after millions of reads, views, and listens to all my work. It's designed for anyone to use their own fandom to get better at making content on the sport they love. Go to Fans with Laptops today. If me talking live about cricket is not enough, we also have an entire channel dedicated to the best stories in cricket called Good Areas. Find out what matchups really mean, understand the logic behind baseball, and look at the most important selection in the history of cricket of Basil D'Oliveira. Come and visit us a couple of times a week on the Good Areas channel for a new video.
Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 85 of the Uncovered podcast. I'm Behram Kazi, who you can find at DefMango on Twitter, and with me, as always, is Jared Kimber, who you can find absolutely everywhere. And as you know, in this particular podcast, we talk about all the off-field stuff that happens in cricket, and there have been a few things. Jared, I want to start with Rohit Sharma's tweet. Did you catch it?
I did, yeah. I was working with Kritika Naidu on Cricket 8, and she showed it to me.
Yeah, I'll read it out for you. It says, the lives of cricketers has become so intrusive that cameras are now recording every step in conversation we are having in privacy with our friends and colleagues at training or on match days. Despite asking Star Sports not to record my conversation, it was then also played on air, which is a breach of privacy. The need to get exclusive content and focused only on views and engagement will one day break the trust between the fans, cricketers, and cricket. Let better sense prevail. You don't normally see Rohit Sharma go out on a rant on social media, especially one that breaches the character limit. And I understand the sentiment. It has gotten to that point where players literally are not allowed to breathe, and it's just content central, left, right, and center. And I mean, brave of him to say it.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he's a player from a different era who is now in a 24-hour social media era. And you can understand why he's harking back to a days when the old-fashioned cricket journalists were more interested in the cricket than everything else. There's always been interest in the other stuff and all that, that hasn't gone away. But the idea of trying to record people with microphones from a distance away and all these sorts of things that are happening now are not particularly ideal. But that is what the money also is there for. And so he's right. In a perfect world, we wouldn't do that, but we don't live in a perfect world. And we had an issue between Virat fans and Rohit fans that ended in a horrible act not that long ago. We have terrible things that go on in the name of cricket regularly around the world. That's just because that's the society we live in. It's not particularly that cricket is any different than anything else. They are some of the most famous athletes on the planet, and in India, obviously, the most famous people on the planet. That people are going to stick microphones and bribe their friends for stories, and you go back to the old stories. I remember when I first started in cricket, it was seen as perfectly acceptable to be friends with the wives of players and even buy them things and help them book things and all this sort of stuff, because the wives of players would quite often give you stories, right? Now, and I could be wrong, but now I don't think that happens as much because the wives are much more clued into the fact that if a journalist is doing that sort of stuff. So it's changed to microphones and other ways of doing it, but it's always been there. And those stories make money for people, and people are going to do that sort of stuff. It's obviously not how I've ever covered cricket. I'm not all that interested in those sorts of private conversations, but it certainly is the way that a lot of people make their money now.
I mean, someone had to say it at some point, I feel. But then to your point, it doesn't particularly change anything either.
I don't see how it's going to stop anything.
Yeah,
right?
that's how
I'm glad that he
content
spoke up
says.
about it, but yeah.
Yeah, it's okay, Rohit. I mean, this is probably your, the twilight of your career. It's going to be over soon anyway. So just, I don't know, stick it out, I suppose. But I completely empathize with you. My empathies are there. Anyway,
look,
someone...
I should just say, I've got a lot of friends who are obviously former players and quite often very, very famous. The sort of stuff that has happened to them in their life, it's not acceptable. But that is what happens when you get to that level of fame, right? We all know that the paparazzi style and all that sort of stuff is absolutely horrendous. But once someone gets to that level of fame, they are worth money to other people. And so, sucker fish go on to the bigger fish. I don't know how the sucker fish actually work, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Any words that come out of Rohit Sharma's mouth are worth money at this point. He's the Indian captain. So yeah, I mean, that is unfortunately how the world works, and I wish it were different. Anyway, on to one of the big, headlines of the week. We now have confirmation that Rahul Dravid won't be carrying on as India head coach after the conclusion of the upcoming T20 World Cup in June. I remember it was during our Uncovered podcast last week that someone kind of broke the news that India had, asked people to apply for the head coach role. They put up a Google Doc, Jared. I was contemplating on whether I should apply or not. Did you check that out?
You should definitely apply. Yeah, I think reading between the lines that Rahul Dravid was never going to come back and the BCCI was still hoping for an about face. Clearly, he doesn't want that job, and he's moving on to other things. And now let the conversations begin. Who is it? Langer, Ponting, Gautam Gambhir. Am I missing any others? Andy Flower, is he one of the ones they've chatted to as well, perhaps?
Fleming, probably, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if Flem does it. But yeah, you would probably have a conversation with him.
Mike Hessen, perhaps?
Yeah, the other interesting thing for me would be, I don't know what kind of coach India need. Because you need a coach in the short term that can handle Rohit and Virat. But actually, this is a bit of a transitional phase, right?
Yep.
When you look at their ages and everything else. So I would find it really, really tricky. But if I was working for the BCCI with this, I would be starting with that conversation. I would be going to Rahul Dravid and to Ajit Agarkar and whoever else, and saying, what kind of coach do we need? And that, I can promise you this, too often with cricket, that conversation is never had. It's just, who can we get? That's not that. If you can get the greatest coach in the world, if they're the wrong coach for you, that's not going to help.
I swear to God, like I can't speak for other countries, but that's how it is in Pakistan. It's like, who can we get as opposed to what do we need? What sort of profile of coach is required for this team to succeed? And India don't have Pakistan's problems, but India do have some problems,
They have
right?
their own problems, right? You know,
Yeah,
they have
and
other
particularly,
issues.
yeah, particularly right now, it's rather difficult to formulate an optimal T20 11. Of course, the other formats are a bit different, and you'd say that Test cricket is somewhat locked down. They've been good for quite a while. ODI cricket, they won't have to take it seriously for a bit. I mean, the Champions Trophy will come around, and we don't even know what will happen there. But the rumor mill has it that they've approached Gautam Gambhir for this top job. And I mean, I've made no, what do I even say without getting butchered over here? People who followed my work will know that I'm not a fan of Gautam Gambhir, the person. But he has had some success in that Kolkata Knight Riders dressing room. I'm not sure how much of a tactics guy he is. He feels like more of a motivator and a vibes guy and giving people
Yeah.
confidence. And the sort of guy who will come into the showers and hold your crotch and tell you you're the best cricketer in the world. That's
Well,
what I think.
hopefully not come in and hold your crotch.
Yeah. Yeah. But he has those weird vibes, doesn't he? He has those crazy eyes. I would never want Gautam Gambhir to look me in the eyes. I would
thought
be
you were gonna
terrified.
say I would never want him to hold my crotch when he's in the shower, which I think is a perfectly reasonable one. Look, I think, as I said on the previous podcast, I'll try and expand on it a little bit, but my thoughts have been that in the IPL, he struggles quite often to talk to the overseas players, and they quite often, he starts to talk and they sort of roll their eyes a little bit.
And he's said some stuff about overseas player. I don't know if you know it, but he's said that, oh, these overseas players, they come and they take our money and they're just here for money and stuff like that. I'm paraphrasing, but he has that very nationalistic vibe to him.
Well, he's a politician. Like, I mean, that, and what, he played from national pride, did he? Or did he play for money as well? Like, it's
national
that
pride.
sort of stuff is nonsensical. And he says a lot of nonsensical stuff. I don't think the BCCI will give it to him, regardless of coaching, just because I think they would be afraid of what he might say when he's representing the side. I could actually see that as being one of his bigger issues, because I know, and Shada Ugra has written another piece for Wisden about the BJP hold over cricket. There's a
Anyone who hasn't read it should go on Wisden's website. It's out. You can actually read it.
Yeah, but there's still a difference between that and having your coach become the story and, and cause issues for you going ahead that you don't want to have to deal with. Cricket boards are usually pretty safe with that sort of stuff. As you said before, I have heard he's much more about that telling everyone they're great than the technical side of things. Maybe that's what they need, right? Maybe they need a vibes master, right, to come in, because Rahul Dravid is probably a great technical coach, and I'm sure he has a very relaxed dressing room. And they might win this next World Cup, right? But they haven't won a lot of stuff under him. Shastri is very different. Kumble's probably a little bit more like Rahul Dravid again.
Yep.
Maybe they just need a guy to come in and tell them that we're all great and that India is a superpower and that this is their time to grab the superpower reins or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just would be very, very surprised if he's the best option. And again, I don't care if he is or not. I care that they're having a conversation about what they need. And, that would be my worry.
It's a lot of for bravado with Gambhir, I feel at times. But you know what? Sometimes that stuff works. Sometimes that is what players need to hear. So I'm not saying it wouldn't work out.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it is that case, because I think they're going through a transition, and perhaps what they need is a slightly more technical, low-key coach. Maybe someone even similar to Rahul Dravid would be a really, really interesting one if they can find that. But they have to have the conversations about what he brings and what the other coaches bring and what their team needs. And if he is the right person for the job, then that's and they've made that decision based on doing the research correctly. I'm not going to have a go at them, right? Even if it doesn't work. I would never have a go at a team that comes up with a really strong thing of what they're trying to do, works through it, and then picks that person. Where I have a problem is most coaches are not selected on that at all, and someone just likes the guy and he ends up coaching.
Gautam Dash says, it's funny that Gautam Dash is actually Gambhir's namesake. Spoon-feeding jingoistic Kool-Aid never works. I love this guy. You should come more frequently to our show.
It's not. We're not really talking about the jingoism. What we're talking about is, look at what McCullum has done.
Yeah.
Right? And if you want to look at a domestic version of that, Jason Gillespie was really good in domestic. But there are a lot of players who played under Jason Gillespie that would be like, technically, barely ever spoke to us. But he made people feel comfortable and he made people feel confident, right? Though that is, with coaching, it is not just the best strategic minds that win. It is the person that can get the most out of individuals. In some teams, you need a technician. Sometimes you need a father figure. Sometimes you need a cheerleader, right? All these teams need different things. If you do not start with that conversation, though, you will probably pick the wrong person almost every time.
Sometimes you need to flip the crowd from the dugout, and I can tell you that Gambhir won't do too badly over there. Kohli and Gambhir in the same dressing room, though. You see that working out?
It's not. I mean, it's unlikely. But they're moving on from Kohli, right? Like, I don't mean that in a bad way. Like, he might play for another couple of years, but he doesn't have that same power that he once had. Clearly, I mean, he was, that's already very clear.
Yeah, I'd pay top dollar, and I think Varun commented earlier that he'd pay top dollar to see Gautam Gambhir and Virat Kohli in the same dressing room. They've shared some pleasantries this season, which I was not a fan of. I wanted them to throw punches at each other. That's what the crowd wanted. Yes. But let's see. I mean, it'll be very interesting to see all of the video footage that comes before the India-Pakistan game if Gautam Gambhir is coach at some point. I'd love to view that. Anyway, more news surrounding the T20 World Cup. Jared, the second semi-final, which is going to be held in Guyana, and we also have confirmation that if India do make it to the Final Four, they will be playing that semi-final in Guyana. It does not have a reserve day. Rather, the match can be extended by 4 hours. What's going on here?
Don't know. Is that a flights-based thing? Do they not want to get private jets or something? So there was 1 year of the IPL where they had private jets. Sadly, not the year that I was working on them. Although I must say, it's usually not private jets. Usually, what they do is they buy the tourist planes. So sometimes from America or from the UK, there'll be like a company that will own their own plane and they will fly them in places. That's the only way to really have a tournament over there. If you rely on the local airlines, they are not set up for groups of, God, how many people would the England or the Indian team have with them? Like 30 or 40 people?
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, your bags don't get on. So we were on a flight with St. Lucia one stage where all the team kits got on, but a lot of the rest of our bags did not get on, right? Stuff like that happens all the time. So my guess is it's probably that based, which is a bad sign because they should be spending the extra money on the flights. But I don't know. But it's a weird one. Yeah. It's not what I expected to hear. Again, it's just that last little bit of amateurism within our game of surely someone in a meeting had to go, nah, we can't do this. We need to fix this problem. And it will. This is the thing. I've worked, with people around the ICC for a very long time. Obviously, I know a lot of people who have worked there or do work there. Too often, when it comes to this sort of stuff, they will go, yeah, but it probably won't be rained out. And it's like, that is not how you run an international tournament of this caliber.
Absolutely
right?
not.
We just said on the last podcast, this is the second biggest sport in the world, and we're like, we can't work out how to have a spare day, so we're just not going to have one. It's like, well, that's probably going to come back to bite you then.
Yeah, I mean, from what I know, Guyana does see some rain, doesn't it? It's not impossible for that to happen.
No. I mean, it's not impossible anywhere, as we've just seen in the IPL last week, and anywhere, right? And Pakistan had some rain in a bunch of tournaments, and there's there was been droughts at times in Australia, and they still have games washed out at times, right? It happens anywhere, so it's a possibility, and it just feels like to me they're always kind of. Cheaping out is the wrong way of putting it. They're always picking what is the easier decision rather than the right decision too often when they're making these tournaments.
Yeah, I suppose so. And I mean, it is sad because in the scenario where that second semi-final gets rained out and the team which is highest seeded goes through, it is a robbery of sorts, right? Because you're taking away...
I tell you what, if they've missed out on an India game being played and then India making the final, I mean,
wow.
Jesus.
I mean, I would expect India to be the highest seeded team in that semi-final.
We have
but
no
still,
idea though. You don't know that.
We,
Do you
we
know what I
don't
mean?
know that. I don't.
They made
That's
the
true.
semi-final in the previous tournament. The tournament before that, they didn't make the finals. They could have a
Yeah.
bad run, right? Like it's not unfeasible that they would have a bad run.
Yeah, I mean, anything could happen in the shortest format. So, yeah, it would like really piss me off if that is to happen. But hopefully, there is no rain and we don't get to that point. All right, we spoke about Jimmy Anderson finally calling time on his career last week. We have some more information now, and I think Shubho wanted us to specifically cover this on this episode of Uncovered. The story goes: Baz McCullum flew in, to England because he felt that this conversation needed to be in person with Jimmy. McCullum, Stokes, and Rob Key, they met Jimmy in a Manchester hotel last month, in which they basically had a meeting which lasted 90 minutes, and they alerted Jimmy that they thought it was time to move on. McCullum led the conversation, and Key thinks that Jimmy wasn't expecting it, but at the same time, it wasn't entirely unexpected either. Do you think the three of them were kind of shitting their pants how they're going to handle this?
Do you know? I can't remember. I had a conversation with someone about this. Might have been John Norman, and maybe even Harmy was involved, where we were trying to work out what happens when they make this decision, because it was bound to happen. I mean, it seems to have shocked a lot of English fans. We were all like, I kind of didn't think he was going to play on beyond the end of this season anyway. And so we had this conversation of who is the person who makes the decision, and we thought it would be Stokes who would go to him. And obviously, to be fair to McCullum and Key, that is their jobs more than it is Stokes. It sounds like it was fairly professional to me. They were open and honest, and they told him what was happening. Perhaps he might not have felt, and he's got his own podcast, so I'm sure he'll talk about it in the future. He might feel like he would have liked to have known before time that it was potentially coming up. And I think the other thing from a cricket perspective is, like, who is the person who replaces him? They haven't really worked that out. But
yes,
having a part-time bowler, and that's the best way to keep him fit and firing and everything else, probably also wasn't ideal. So you're probably picking between two less than an ideal situations. I credit the guys for going over and doing that, because I think some stuff with Broad and Anderson previously had been quite badly handled by people who were in charge. They fronted up, they got in the room, they explained their position. That's life. That's you're a professional athlete, and Jimmy's probably never had to go through this in the way that other professional athletes have.
Yeah.
Even the greatest professional athletes don't always get to choose when they finish, right? And if he could have retired at any time in the last 6 years and go out on the top, he wanted to push every last wicket out that he could.
Yep.
And eventually they said, look, it's not helping us anymore. And you can debate that as a cricket person, and I'm sure he would disagree with that, but they are looking for the present and the future. And Jimmy Anderson is looking to get as many wickets as possible in the next game. They have conflicting views on life. They should be thinking about these things differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the main caveat over here is the fact that there is no obvious replacement. And I see Stuart Broad is already talking about it, and he's got a gig with Sky as well now. So I'm excited for the English summer. I won't be able to hear the commentary, though, on the first test, because hopefully I'll be there at Lord's.
You will hear the commentary because they give you a little radio.
Oh, but isn't that the BBC one?
No, it's got both. You can flip
that's
between
lovely.
the two. I think it's just the two. And I don't think you get any of the others, even if there's another commentary. Because I know SEN have done it and a few others. But yeah, I think it's just the main two that you get the access to. No, it's really handy.
Yeah, no, I would love
There
to
you go.
hear
That's
Sky
a bit of
commentary.
inside baseball, but you can get them at the grounds as well.
No, as a viewer, like when I went to watch the 2019 Cricket World Cup, I did buy that thing, but it was just the BBC one. And I was like, I want to hear the guys that I always hear.
No, so as a viewer, I think you can buy individual ones, but there's a box at the back. This is so inside baseball, no one cares. But there's a big box at the back of the press box that just has thousands of them, because most of us lose or crush them throughout. In fact, the biggest problem is that the back fall off them and the battery comes off. And then anyway, you end up with about 2 or 3 of them throughout the year. But the ECB look after you, and it's a really good idea as well. For me, I'm watching the game. I've got my own view. I usually listen to Sky. I then have the TV as a backup. Sometimes I have my iPad and be streaming the game as well. Like, if I miss something, it's my own fault, or I went to take a whiz.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll be asking you all about that stuff when I come over, and we're all looking forward to that, I suppose. And now everyone else knows. Anyway, final topic of the day on Uncovered. I told you earlier how the PSL are looking towards expansion and moving towards a permanent window, which clashes with the IPL. Well, we have confirmation that the expansion will happen from 2026 onwards. The PSL will have a seventh and eighth team, and they've also made themselves clear that, they've made the desire clear that they want to push for a permanent move to the April-May window, the PCB. Now, there are a lot of owners who aren't happy with this. Of course, of the Lahore Qalandars, who retained injured Rashid Khan to play him next year, all of a sudden are risking or have that risk of losing him to the IPL. I know that they'll never be keen on that. And we do have confirmation that 3 franchises remain firmly opposed to this. But it's a decision that the PCB's governing council makes. And based on what I've heard, they're like, we'll convince them this, that, the other. And one of the incentives that they're giving franchises is that they'll allow them to sign one marquee player, a platinum player, independently of the draft. So maybe they can lower a certain Glenn Phillips by paying him 100K more than the IPL, even though I think the IPL will outbid them. But I like that. I like that part, because now you're guaranteeing 8 solid options, right? Who could potentially sign up for the PSL. So thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a big issue with the PSL. PSL should be a domestic product, right? The only reason I would ever not want it to be a domestic product would be if it linked with Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and they had a Uber League, then that would be a little bit more different. But if it's just, it's not particularly well watched overseas. The IPL is not brilliantly watched overseas as well, but that doesn't matter as much. Whereas I should say there are enough expat Indians around that there are still pockets of it being watched. But the PSL is just not that watched. I don't know that many people who work in cricket who watch the PSL, so I don't think there's any issue with it clashing with the IPL, unless young Pakistanis start watching the IPL and not the PSL. That would be the only one.
Doubt that. Because they love it over here.
Yeah, I mean, maybe cricket mad people who love cricket might turn away to the better competition. That would be the only thing I would be worried about. But I've no problem with it being domestic. It should have 8 teams. It's ridiculous that it's had 6 teams. If I was an owner, I'd be upset, but that's my job, right? If I'm an owner or I'm a general manager, the league has to run it for the league, and they're going to come up with things that are occasionally going to stuff me over, right? So, look at the IPL at the moment. There are teams that I think if I was them, I'd be saying 4 players is the absolute most we can keep before this mega auction. There are other teams who'd be going, we have to get it to 10. You try and do the thing that is best for your team. So the Colanders are probably thinking to themselves, well, that's not ideal, but they will work it out. And if they have a bad season, well, then they have a bad season. And no one's going to, if the PSL is successful in 30 years' time, no one is going to care that that Rashid Khan didn't play for them in that season. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, it actually doesn't matter. And I know it matters a lot to the players and the coaches and the people who make money from that team. I don't think they shouldn't be angry. But when it comes down to it, eventually it doesn't matter.
I think there are a few caveats. Of course, broadcasting is one, but then you'll always find another broadcaster, right? Someone will end up showing the PSL. Maybe you'll make lesser money or whatever, but ultimately your product will be on TV. IPL outbidding the PSL could be a thing. We don't know that yet, right? English player availability is big because one of the PSL's main selling points is that young English talent comes there. It, gets nurtured. It performs.
I'm not being silly. Does that really matter to Pakistanis that young English talent is playing in there?
I mean, they do take a certain amount of pride in the Harry Brooks and the Phil Salts and I don't know, the Tim Davids, even though he's
You're talking about cricket fans.
Yes. Not
the vast majority of people who are watching the PSL are casual fans. Are they really going to give a shit that Phil Salt isn't playing in that tournament, right? That you've got. This is the biggest thing, but for years of having talked to all these leagues, that's where they need to get to. And we're never going to talk about that stuff because that's not what we are. Our job is to talk about all the minutiae and so-and-so is... But realistically, if you're running a league, you're not running it for cricket nerds like us. You're running it so that the guy comes home from work that day, or the couple who are bored or whatever. Instead of turning on a movie, they turn on the PSL. Phil Salt's a fantastic cricketer. I just don't know how many extra people are flicking over because Phil Salt's coming on to bat. Doesn't mean that it doesn't help, right? We've seen with the Big Bash, there was a bit of a plateau because they didn't keep getting the big name players. But essentially, the Big Bash is still quite healthy, right? It's got its own issues, but it's still watched by people in Australia.
Another caveat, Jared, is that the coaching and support staff is limited within the cricket world. You're going
That
to
is
miss
true.
out on some of the better ones, right?
What
So
you're
that
saying is, oh, sorry, I pressed the wrong button there. What you're saying is, I'm more of a chance of getting a job now in the PSL. So I'm not.
I'm gonna make sure that both of us are working at one of the 7th or 8th teams. You should gear up for that.
Yeah, I think.
Manifest it.
Can we Kickstarter an ownership group and just do it all ourselves?
I
You're right. Look, all these things matter. Directors. There aren't that many people who direct cricket broadcasts, right? There are probably physios, analysts, fielding coaches, and everything. You'd probably be able to pick those people up from other leagues. So it will open up more jobs. The quality of the cricket will go down. You add 2 extra teams, and and I think that is a fair expectation, and it makes sense. And the old Big Bash league, before it was a league, the old Big Bash, the original one, is probably stronger than the current Big Bash because they put an extra 2 teams in.
True.
I have no issue with all that sort of stuff, but they will find people. But you're right; it will be a little bit more random, but that will open. More opportunities for other people as well. So again, that's not a reason not to do it.
Local analysts and all of that stuff. Plus, you can recruit the best players who aren't playing the IPL and maybe lower a few by those marquee contracts that they're talking about. And the PSL or the PCB wants to take the playoffs potentially next year to the UK to, for more reach and increase the global footprint. I'm not sure if this is the right time for that, but eventually, I don't know. India.
Look, I think it's a great idea because I would go. But I don't see what the point of it is at all. Certainly not the playoffs, right? Like if you played the first round, American sport does this sometimes, right? It would be really, really cool to say to, the Oval and Old Trafford and a couple of the other grounds and just say to them, we're going to play a couple of games here at the start of the year to jumpstart our season. But also, they can't do that because probably the time of year is not ideal for that. So
they want to go in the summer. Like now when I'm sweating like literally buckets, this is when they want to be playing in the UK.
But here's my question to you. How does it help to take a local product to the UK, which I don't think... The IPL is not massive in the UK. It's known, and it was probably more respected when it was on free-to-air TV. It really was quite big back then. So there's a whole generation who were really into the IPL because they came home from school and watched it. But it's not massive. Isn't it a bit unfair to the Pakistani fans who have built this up to suddenly take the finals away to a market that isn't really embracing their sport anyway?
It is unfair. I think that Pakistan deserves those playoffs. I do see a bit of value in increasing the global footprint, though. But to your point, if the IPL is not as big, then how big can the PSL really be in the UK?
I don't. The IPL would be the only tournament I would be worried about my global footprint, and even then, that would be probably in the next 10 or 15 years, I would start to worry about that.
Yeah.
I have said this since New Zealand and England pulled out of those things. The most important thing for Pakistan is make the PSL work in Pakistan. Everything else, international cricket, should be secondary to that because they don't know if teams are going to continually tour them. They don't know if they're going to be able to make the money from having teams come and play them at home. They know the PSL will go ahead every single year. That should be their number one concern, to make sure that they can continue to grow and develop cricket in their country.
Yeah, and next season they will have to test the waters by default to coexist with the IPL because the calendar is such that they go to South Africa, come back, host a tri-series between South Africa, New Zealand, and themselves. Then they have, the Champions Trophy. Then there's Ramzan. Then there is this window of the IPL. So it's going to happen, and we'll find out next year. Plus, the owners, their lease ends the year after. So in 2026, the 10-year lease ownership agreements end, and they will basically get a right of first refusal. The owners, what that means is that the franchises will be up for sale if they don't match the franchise valuation. So I'm expecting drama, Jared.
Yeah, it's not going to be smooth, I think is the best way of putting it.
Absolutely not. Anyway, that wraps up everything on Uncovered. Let's take our super chats. Swami Nathan Ramesh Sashi is the first one who says, who are the best ever cricketers from Pakistan's Punjab? Imran is there. Wasim is there. Traditionally, all the fast bowlers were from Punjab and the batters were from Karachi. But now Babar Azam is from Punjab as well. So it's a very densely populated area in Pakistan, the most densely populated area. So a lot of your cricketers by default are Punjabi. But the KP guys have really stepped it up. Your Shaheens and Naseems and Rizwans, who share their ethnic background with the Afghan people. You can probably see the similarity in their faces and everything. That's where it's at in Pakistan currently. Those guys are flourishing. Path right winger says UAE resident. Football is the sport for locals. Heard Jared speak about Fizz's language barrier. English is cricket's language. Arabs speak good English. Why haven't they historically played cricket? Whoa, whoa, whoa. What?
There's a lot going on in this question. It's really hot, and standing in the sun for 7 hours in a really hot place is not always the easiest thing. It's probably hotter there than it is in some other places. UAE is not an empire place, so cricket wouldn't have been pushed there as much as anywhere else. I mean, I think you know this, Path, that cricket is basically a Commonwealth sport up until very, very recently, even to its own detriment, with the fact that, America and Argentina should be test playing nations and aren't because of the stupid regulation that South Africa, of all countries, pushed for, to have Commonwealth nations being the only ones who can play test cricket. English is cricket's language, largely because it's an English sport, an English game, and most of the phrases outside of what Dusra, Tisra, what's the other one? The one that you flick out the front of your hand. Most of the phrases are English words. So when I say English is cricket's language, it's because if you talk to a kid who speaks another language, they will still know the English words for a lot of the cricket things, because that's the way that they have been taught. It doesn't necessarily mean that everyone in cricket speaks English, which is a different thing, right? And that's what I was saying about baseball. So baseball, fly ball, bunt, and all those sorts of things. The Spanish kids are taught those phrases. They're not taught how to speak, Spanish-speaking kids, I should say, but they're not taught how to speak English. And cricket's exactly the same. Urdu and Hindi, or the combination of it, or the two languages separately, however you want to look at it, is really probably should take over as the language of cricket. If you think about it. And I would assume in the next 10 to 15 years that might be the case. But I think even then they will still use English words to describe certain things in cricket, just because of the way that it's gone through. But
also, there is a post-colonial hangover in the subcontinent, the Indian subcontinent, Pakistan, India, where speaking English is seen as this sign of,
Yeah, and also English is, until maybe in 50 years' time, it'll be very, very different. But English is still the international business language, right? Like it's
true.
It's English is hanging on, even if England, the country, is no longer as important as it used to be. But just speaking English doesn't make you a cricket nation. There are many nations that speak English, right? Who are not particularly cricket. Like, USA is the most famous one, and Ireland would be up there as another one.
Path is saying that English had Arab colonies for a smidgen. They had India for a long time.
Also, it's not about having a colony. It is about what they were using the colonies for.
Yeah.
Right? So here's a fun fact, and it'll be in my next book, which is that England, when India went independent, the MCC kept playing them in what they were calling Commonwealth games, right? So I think there were 2 MCC tours of India, and they were specifically touring India because they wanted India to join the Commonwealth after going independent, right? That is how important cricket is in different parts of the world. And we're not talking about just a normal sport here, right? It was literally used as a Commonwealth tool, as a empire building tool. That isn't the case in every single country that England was in, right? There are different relationships that cricket has in different parts of the world. And so very, very different. But not every Commonwealth country is cricket mad either, right? Like Canada is the perfect example. Kenya would probably be up there as well. I'm trying to think of Malaysia.
It's also the different kind of colonialism, Jared. Like think of Canada and its settler colonialism, right? They extinguished the indigenous tribes, whereas the Indian subcontinent was exploitation.
Exactly.
You had to get the riches. It's a different kind. Even Australia was settler colonialism.
If you look at it, look at all the African countries that are in the Commonwealth. We have South Africa. Uganda has always had a decent history. Kenya on and off again. Of the Commonwealth countries there. Then you've got Brunei and Malaysia, are 2 that haven't really gone in for cricket, but cricket has been in Malaysia before. Obviously, the Caribbean is absolutely fine. Malta, right? was one. So different countries, have been looked at very differently. Fiji, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu. I think I'm getting all those three right. Have all, and I think quite a few of the other islands have all had cricket played there, and they have a local version of cricket in some of those countries as well, which is separate to the normal cricket. What they didn't always get is cricket being pushed on the people for training and everything else. So you get all those sorts of things. And then you get in India, and I've forgotten the ethnic group, but it was the Parsis, I think, that first got into cricket on their own. You need an ethnic group that get into cricket on their own, right? So the interesting thing about cricket in Australia is the people who actually got into it were Irish and Scottish immigrants, right? Whereas back in Ireland and Scotland, cricket was there, and it was certainly a sport that they played. But when they got to Australia, for whatever reasons, it became a more important part in their thing. All these things matter. The just being a Commonwealth nation and just speaking English is probably not going to mean that you are going to play cricket. There's a few different things that need to happen with all that sort of stuff. Apology
100%.
to Canada, which is obviously no longer Commonwealth. They left, didn't they?
We're not a part of the crown anymore. I swore an oath to the Queen.
I'm pretty sure. Wait, am I wrong? Oh no, it is. It is. Sorry, it is.
Yeah.
I thought because there are countries that have left the Commonwealth, aren't they? But are still playing the Commonwealth Games. So that's such a weird sub thing, but I'm pretty sure that's true, that there are a couple of countries that are no longer technically in the Commonwealth, but still play part of the Commonwealth. Don't get me started on the Commonwealth Games. The Commonwealth Games is so stupid. My dad gets so excited every time the Commonwealth Games comes up. And I was just like, what are you getting excited about? Oh my God.
Yeah, also Path is a Parsi from Mumbai. Hey,
there we go.
Yeah,
but you know what I mean?
anyway.
Like, there's so many little things that need to happen. So, it's not just as simple as one thing ever makes you a cricket nation.
Yeah, fair enough.
Don't
look at Afghanistan.
on the Danish.
Yeah. Look at Afghanistan, right?
Yeah.
No English, no colonialism, still made it. Anyway, that wraps up this episode of Uncovered. So for everyone who joined us in the comment section, thank you so much. If you enjoyed this video, like it on YouTube and subscribe to both this channel and Jared's other channel on YouTube. Of course, do not forget to go to goodareas.co. Bookmark that webpage because that can be your one-stop shop for all of our written content, our videos, and our podcasts. That is it for this week's episode of Uncovered. We'll be back next week with another episode. And take care of yourselves, guys. We'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Sometimes you just need to take the slips out and bowl defensively. And you need to be just as careful with your computer's defenses as well. And for that, why not use nordvpn.com/Kimber to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan and 4 additional months for free. It's also completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Sounds like rhyming slang, but it's not. The link is in the show notes. So put in some dot balls and turn them into maidens via nordvpn.com/Kimber. If you make a lot of content like me, you will need help. And that is why we use Minvo.pro, a slicing and dicing tool that uses AI to conjure up great clips from your podcast chats and meetings. If you make content, go to Minvo.pro to cut it.